I woke up to the feeling of a woman's hands pushing against my chest. Are you satisfied now? If you are, then get out. Don't forget what you promised me. I did what you wanted. Now you have to let our daughter come home for a few days. The next second, I fell backward onto the Kong, and then I opened my eyes that I sat up abruptly, my mind completely blank. The first thing I saw was my wife, Song Yakin. She was curled up on the Kong, clutching a patched quilt tightly around herself. Her face, once delicate and full of life, was now completely numb. Her eyes were empty, like she had already given up on everything. Her body was covered with bruises and injuries. The sight froze me in place, and my mind went into chaos. I rubbed my face hard, trying to wake myself up and understand what was happening. Then I slowly looked around. Everything in front of me felt both familiar and impossible. The low ceiling, the dim sunlight squeezing through a window covered with old newspaper, the cracked mud floor, the walls built from a mixture of clay and straw, carrying the marks of decades of hardship. Old farming tools sat neatly in the corner beside worn household items. Several faded cloth bags hung from the wall, holding the little grain our family had left. The smell of smoke, earth, and old wood filled the room. It was the smell of home, the smell of my childhood. But that was impossible, because I was dead. That I had died with nothing but regret. Regret for everything I had done. That my eyes widened as the truth slowly became clear. I had been given another chance. That I had been reborn. Back more than 20 years ago, back to my old home in the rural Northeast, back to the time when I was still the man who ruined everything. That I covered my burning eyes with my hands. My heart was overwhelmed. That I reached towards Song Yakin. But before I could touch her, she immediately pushed my hand away. Don't touch me. Her voice was filled with disgust and fear. Keep your dirty hands away from me. Get away. Only then did I finally understand I wasn't just seeing my wife, I was seeing the damage I had caused. That I in my previous life, I had been a monster. When Yakin gave birth to our daughter instead of a son, I called the child a burden. That a useless daughter. That I blamed my wife for everything. Instead of working, I drank every day. Instead of taking responsibility, I buried myself in alcohol and self-pity. My father-in-law had begged people for help, even giving away grain and half a pig, just to get me a job at a livestock farm. I lasted 3 days. Then I was fired. After that, I returned home and did nothing. I drank with useless friends. Then I got addicted to gambling. I lost everything. The family's savings, the food reserves, everything we depended on. Whenever I lost money, I came home drunk and took my anger out on my wife and daughter. Eventually, Yakin had no choice but to send our little girl to her grandparents' home. The child could only come back secretly for short visits. Even Yakin herself couldn't stay overnight at her parents' place, because if I found out, I would cause trouble until everyone suffered. I stole food from my in-laws. I even fought with her father when I was drunk. Those were my sins. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I was a disaster that destroyed my own family. The realization hit me so hard that I raised my hand and slapped myself. Once, twice, again and again, until the corner of my mouth split and my face became swollen. But Song Yakin only looked at me coldly. There was no surprise and no sympathy, only disbelief, because she had seen this too many times. Every time I lost at gambling, I would regret it. Every time, I would promise to change, and every time, nothing changed. To her, my apologies were worthless. She had already learned not to believe me. That I remembered the despair in her eyes from my previous life, the fear, the helplessness. She had once thought about ending her own life. But she couldn't, because her daughter was only 5 years old, because her elderly parents couldn't survive my cruelty, and because of the threat I once made, the day she mentioned divorce. I had cornered her and our daughter with a butcher knife. That I still remembered my own words. If you dare leave me, I'll send your parents down with you. Then I'll sell the child. Those words had trapped her for years. That I had turned the woman who once loved me into someone who only existed to survive another day. But now, I had another chance, and I would never repeat that life. Yakin, my voice trembled. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I wasn't a man. All of this was my fault. I swear, I'll never drink again. I'll never gamble again. We'll bring our daughter home. I'll work hard. I'll make sure you and our daughter live a good life. I won't let either of you suffer again. I didn't know if she believed me. Honestly, I didn't expect her to. Words meant nothing anymore. Only actions could prove anything. After saying that, I climbed down from the Kong. Then I picked up the few remaining kilograms of grain stored in the house. I put on my old fur hat that I threw on my worn cotton coat. Then I lowered my head and walked outside. Behind me, Song Yakin slowly began putting on her clothes. Her expression was filled with despair. From her perspective, I was taking away the last bit of food the family had, the only grain left to survive the winter. She believed I was going to sell it for gambling money. And honestly, that was exactly what the old me would have done. After putting on her coat and scarf, she quietly moved toward the window. She wanted to see where I went as soon as I was gone. She planned to sneak back to her parents' house and bring our daughter home for one night. Just one night. Then she would send the child back before I returned. That was how careful she had to be. Around me, her eyes filled with tears, she prayed that I would leave quickly. But then, the footsteps outside stopped. Song Yakin froze. Through the window, she saw me standing in the yard, not moving. Her heart tightened. Had I changed my mind? Had I realized she hadn't satisfied me? Was I coming back? Her fear returned instantly. She knew better than anyone that a gambler's promises meant nothing. I in panic. She rushed into the outer room and grabbed the kitchen knife. Her hands trembled. She stood behind the door, eyes tightly shut. She had endured enough if I came back to hurt her again. Then this time, she would fight. I stood outside for a long time, trying to calm my mind and accept the reality that I had been given another life. Only after I slowly adjusted to everything did I finally start walking. I had left home with one thought in mind, that I needed to change, that I needed to find a way to improve our family's situation. The Northeast winter was brutal in those years. The cold didn't just freeze the surface of your skin. It felt like it could reach straight into your bones. Without a hat, even the back of your head felt like freezing air was drilling into it. I rubbed my hands together and took a deep breath. The icy air rushed into my lungs, sharp enough to make me shiver, but it also cleared my mind completely. My first stop was old Wang's house at the west end of the village. That I leaned against his wooden fence and shouted, "Uncle Wang, are you home?" A moment later, a voice came from inside. "Is that you, Chen family's third boy? What do you need?" Because I was the third son in my family, many villagers had called me third boy since I was young. Old Wang stepped outside after recognizing me. He tapped his old smoking pipe against his shoe, knocking out the ashes. "I need to borrow your fish trap and bird net for a while. I'll return them later." It went smoother than I expected. Those tools weren't worth much, and Old Wang didn't hesitate. He handed me the trap. But as he stood there watching me, he seemed like he wanted to say something. In the end, he only sighed. Years ago, I had been one of the best young men in the village. Hardworking, capable, someone people had praised. Nobody understood how I had become the person I was now. A man who let his wife and daughter starve. A man who drank, gambled, and hurt the people who depended on him. Old Wang shook his head and went back inside. He felt sorry for me and probably wondered if there was still any hope left. I carried the tools and unconsciously looked back toward my house. That was when I saw Song Yakin quietly leaving. She was heading toward the west side of the village, going to bring our daughter back. My heart tightened. The guilt hit me again that I knew I couldn't continue living like before. Not even for another day. While Yakin was gone, I quickly returned home. I closed the door and began making hunting tools. My father had once been a hunter. He was old now and no longer went into the mountains. But I had grown up watching him work. I still remembered some of his methods. I bent and twisted iron wire in my hands. Soon, I had made a simple trap. Then I gathered some branches and tied them together, creating a basic bird snare. The winter wind made my hands red and stiff. My fingers hurt from the cold, but I kept working. While warming my hands with my breath, I thought about my past. There had been a time when I was my parents' pride. The villagers had believed I had a bright future, but after I became obsessed with having a son, after disappointment and resentment consumed me, I slowly lost myself. I started drinking, then gambling. Then I became someone nobody recognized. My parents had been completely disappointed in me. Eventually, we separated households, and they cut ties with me. I clenched my fists. I can't be that person anymore. This time, I'll make something of myself. I won't disappoint the people who still care about me. Those words weren't meant for anyone else. They were a promise to myself. Right now, the most important things were simple. Food, warmth, survival. In this era, those were the things that mattered most. I had to make sure my wife and daughter could eat enough and survive the winter, I had to prove through my actions that I had truly changed. Outside, the wind howled. Snow drifted down from the gray sky that I picked up my homemade hunting tool and walked toward the mountains. About half an hour later, I reached the barren hills behind the village. Below the mountain was a vast stretch of empty land. Everything was covered in thick snow. The entire world looked silver and silent. The winters in the Northeast during the 1980s were harsh. Temperatures often dropped far below freezing. The wind cut across your face like a knife. Heavy snow could even block the roads between villages that I took another breath. The cold air burned my lungs. Down my back was the small bag of grain we had left. It wasn't much. It was actually food that Yakin had brought back from her parents' home. Enough to barely get the family through winter. In my previous life, I had never cared that I always kept the best food for myself. That my wife and daughter could only eat whatever was left. And after gambling took over my life, even I couldn't eat properly. The two of them became thin and weak from hunger. But this time, I didn't bring this grain out for myself. I had another purpose. A way to turn this little bit of food into something more valuable. I wanted to attract wild birds. In this era, food was wealth. And these mountains were full of hidden resources. If I could catch some game, I could improve our meals, maybe even create a foundation for our future. After walking around the area, I found the perfect spots. I carefully set up several traps where sparrows and wild chickens had left traces. Then I scattered grain around them. I covered everything with branches and leaves. The traps blended into the snow. Sparrows were considered one of the major agricultural pests back then. There were countless numbers of them. And during winter, when food was scarce, they became easier to catch. After everything was prepared, I found a snow-covered hollow and lay down inside. I stared at the gray sky. And then something strange happened. A flood of unfamiliar information appeared in my mind. The terrain, the weather, the movements of nearby creatures. Everything became clearer. I opened my eyes in shock. After being reborn, I had gained a strange ability that I could sense the presence of living creatures, even predict their movements. A bird flying above me. I could almost tell where it would turn next. Excitement surged through me. With my skills from the past and this new ability, this mountain was no longer just a mountain. It was a treasure waiting to be discovered. Hunting, gathering herbs, planting crops. There were countless ways to rebuild our life. I could make sure Yakin and my daughter never went hungry again. I closed my eyes and felt the cold wind brush against my face. This was a new beginning. A chance to rewrite my fate. After a while, I stood up and picked up my tools. Nearby, a small river had completely frozen over. I walked onto the ice and started breaking through it. Young again, what a difference. I smiled. Then I spat into my palms, tightened my grip on the pickaxe, and continued working. After about 10 minutes, I finally broke through the ice. I dropped the fishing net into the opening and tied the other end to a nearby branch with a rope. Once everything was ready, I immediately headed into the woods. Using the information in my mind, I searched through the forest. Soon, I found an old poplar tree towering above the others. I prepared myself and began climbing. It took a lot of effort. But eventually, I reached the top. There was a bird nest hidden among the branches. Without hesitation, I reached inside. My heart was beating faster. When my hand touched the contents of the nest, I felt several smooth, round objects. I pulled them out. 7 or 8 pine sparrow eggs. Even in the middle of winter, only these birds would still lay eggs. Looking at the eggs in my hand, I couldn't help smiling. This was only the beginning. Tonight, I would boil these eggs. My daughter needed nourishment. I carefully placed the eggs into the pocket of my old cotton coat. Then I climbed back down. After returning to my traps, I checked around. Nothing yet. I gritted my teeth and took another handful of sorghum from the grain bag. I scattered it near the traps. Then I returned to the frozen stream. I grabbed a rope and slowly pulled the fishing net upward. As the net broke through the ice, my breath turned into white mist in the freezing air. The setting sun painted the snow-covered mountains red, and for the first time in years, I felt the joy of harvest. The water beneath the ice splashed. My heartbeat grew faster because I knew something was waiting inside. When the fishing net finally broke through the ice, a bright smile spread across my face. Inside were 2 wild crucian carp, each about the size of my palm. Their silver scales reflected the sunlight. There were a lot of bones, but the meat was tender and fresh. perfect for making a warm soup. But that wasn't all. There was also a small handful of river shrimp trapped inside. The little creatures were still alive, desperately moving around as if protesting their unexpected capture. I quickly took out the metal thermos cup I had brought with me and carefully transferred the fish and shrimp inside. After making sure nothing could escape, I sealed the lid tightly, tied a rope around it for extra security, and hung it from my waist. My face was already red from the cold. But at that moment, all I felt was satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had accomplished something. That I returned to the area where I had placed the traps. But after checking around, I was disappointed. There was no movement. It seemed most sparrows and wild chickens only became active at night, that I would have to come back later. Thinking about that, I carried the thermos cup, touched the pine sparrow eggs in my coat pocket, and picked up the remaining sorghum. My heart felt unusually warm as I walked home. By the time the sky began to darken, Song Yakin had returned. She was holding the hand of a little girl. The child looked around 4 or 5 years old. She had a sweet, innocent face and a pair of bright eyes like black grapes. But the moment she stepped into the house, she became nervous. "Mom, where's Dad? Why isn't he here?" Her small voice was filled with uncertainty. "Don't worry about him. Tonight, you sleep with Mom. Tomorrow morning, I'll take you back to your grandma's house. If he comes back, we won't have a peaceful night." Song Yakin helped her daughter onto the Kong. "I'll go make some food. Are you hungry?" The little girl nodded, but she still sat at the edge of the Kong. She didn't dare climb up. This was supposed to be her home. Yet to her, it felt unfamiliar, almost like a place she didn't belong. In her young mind, her grandparents' house was where she truly lived. This was her father's home. And without her father's permission, she wasn't allowed to stay overnight. Song Yakin watched her daughter sitting there carefully, looking around at everything with confusion. Her heart ached. It had been almost half a year since the child had returned. Ever since winter began, she had been sent back to her grandparents. Song Yakin could only visit her whenever she missed her, but she never dared bring her daughter home, because if Chen Lu found out, being scolded would be the least of their problems. He could make the entire night unbearable. Even if the child cried, he would scream until morning. Looking at her daughter, a child who technically had a father but lived as if she didn't, Song Yakin felt deep sorrow. How had the man she married become this? She walked around the room, but she couldn't find anything to eat. Only then did she remember. The little food left at home had already been taken away by Chen Lu. He had carried it off to gamble. Her parents' supplies were running low too. Having her daughter stay there meant another mouth to feed. Sometimes, when Song Yakin was so hungry she couldn't endure it anymore, she had no choice but to return to her parents' home and share their food. Because of this, her elderly parents' lives had become harder and harder. The grain they saved by going without was all used to support her and her daughter. "Nuno, be good and wait here. Mom will go borrow a few potatoes. When I come back, I'll roast them for you." The child hadn't eaten yet. Afraid her daughter would go hungry, Song Yakin comforted her before leaving at night. The northeast countryside became even colder. Seeing that Chen Lu still hadn't returned, Song Yakin finally relaxed a little. It seemed he really had gone gambling, at least tonight. She could let her daughter stay. After leaving the house, she went to her neighbor's home. Seeing that the wooden gate hadn't been locked yet, she quietly sighed in relief. "Xiaojuan, are you home?" Song Yakin had always been quiet by nature. After years of suffering under Chen Lu, she had become even more withdrawn, and now she was here to borrow food. Just thinking about it made her feel embarrassed. Her life had become something people could gossip about, but she couldn't let her daughter go hungry. So she gathered her courage and called out again. "Xiaojuan, are you there? Could you?" Before she finished speaking, the door opened and a trace of hope appeared on Song Yakin's face. A woman with 2 braids, wearing a floral cotton jacket and cloth shoes, stepped outside. This was Hu Xiaojuan. She had grown up with Song Yakin and later married into the same village. The 2 women had once been extremely close. When they were young, Song Yakin's father worked in the kitchen of a state-owned restaurant and could occasionally bring home extra food. Back then, Song Yakin never worried about going hungry. But Hu Xiaojuan's family was poor. Her father was irresponsible. Her mother was always sick. So Song Yakin would secretly save some of her own food and give it to her friend. Over time, they became like sisters. But after marriage, their lives completely changed. Hu Shojuan had married a good man. Her husband worked at the forestry station. The work was tiring, but he earned work points every month and received ration coupons, oil coupons, and even meat coupons from his workplace. In this era, those coupons were sometimes more valuable than money. Their household was doing well. Meanwhile, separated by only one wall, Song Yakin's family struggled just to eat. Hu Shojuan had also given birth to a son, which gave her a much stronger position in her family. Their conditions were still modest, but she had married well. Yakin? Why are you here? Is something wrong? Hu Shojuan stood at the door. Her hair was slightly messy. Her cheeks were flushed. It was obvious she and her husband had just been resting together. Song Yakin lowered her head awkwardly. She hadn't expected the couple to already be asleep together so early. Maybe this was what a happy marriage looked like, something she could only envy. Can I borrow 2 potatoes? Just 2 is enough. Chunlu wasn't home today, so I brought Nyonyo back. But I forgot she hadn't eaten at her grandparents' place, and we don't have any food left. As Song Yakin spoke, she looked hopeful. She believed her old friend would help her if nobody else would. Hu Shojuan would. But then, Yakin, our family doesn't have much food either. This month alone, you already borrowed half a jean of cornmeal and a small bag of sorghum from us. You still haven't returned any of it. Hu Shojuan's voice wasn't cruel, but there was hesitation and discomfort in it. I know that before we married, you helped me a lot. But after marriage, I've already repaid that kindness. With your family situation, who would dare keep lending you grain? I know this sounds harsh, but a woman depends on the man she marries. Your husband, he's already ruined his own life. But you can't drag everyone else down with him. Everyone in the village knew what Chunlu had become. A man who had lost his conscience. Everyone said Song Yakin had suffered terrible misfortune by marrying him. But in this era, a woman's life was already difficult. Marrying a good man meant at least having enough food and clothing. Marrying someone like Chunlu meant never knowing when the next disaster would come. That moment, Hu Shojuan felt a small sense of relief inside. She was grateful she had chosen the right husband. Song Yakin had once been one of the prettiest girls in the village, but she had ended up with a man who ruined everything. That was just fate. Was there any way to refuse it? I knew it. There were rules in every trade. When I pulled the fishing net out of the water, I wasn't just taking something from nature, I was borrowing someone else's tools. And people who made a living from hunting and fishing always respected those unwritten rules. So even though I hadn't caught any wild chickens yet, I still had to share part of my harvest. That was basic courtesy. All right, I understand. Shojuan, you go ahead and get busy. I'll try asking somewhere else. Song Yakin's eyes dimmed after being refused. She forced an embarrassed smile and turned around, ready to leave. Don't go asking anymore. I'll give you 2 potatoes. But only this once. No one's family owes you anything. Food isn't that easy to borrow. Hu Shojuan sighed, then turned back inside. As soon as she entered the room, the man lying on the Kong immediately grabbed her hand. Who was it? Was it Yakin from next door again? You should give her a little more. You 2 grew up together, and you both married into this village. She's had a hard life, and the child is innocent. If we can help, we should help a little. The man speaking was Wang Jiangwo. He looked like the kind of person everyone trusted. Honest, hardworking, strong. He worked at the forestry station and had a good reputation among his co-workers. But after hearing him say that, Hu Shojuan rolled her eyes. Why should we keep helping her? Her husband is useless. What can anyone do about that? Our food didn't fall from the sky. Everyone in the village is trying to survive the winter. Do you think grain is that easy to spare? Then she narrowed her eyes. Wang Jiangwo, don't tell me you're helping her because she's pretty. You want to use a little food to get close to her? Trying to sneak into another woman's bed? Hu Shojuan grabbed his ear fiercely. Ow! Let go. What are you talking about? Don't make me sound like that. If people hear this, how am I supposed to face anyone? Wang Jiangwo pushed her hand away, rubbed his ear, and crawled back under the blanket. He didn't want to argue anymore. He had only thought about helping. After all, Yakin was his wife's old friend. Seeing someone fall into such a miserable situation. If he could help a little, why not? Put away those thoughts of yours. Hu Shojuan pointed at him. Don't get too confident just because you're strong. If I ever find out you're fooling around with another woman, You'll regret it. Seeing her husband surrender, Hu Xiaojun became satisfied. Only then did she go to the basement and take out 2 potatoes. She walked slowly toward the door at night. Winter in the northeast became a completely different world. During the day, even at 20 degrees below zero, there was at least sunlight. But once night arrived, the temperature could drop below -30. The cold was deadly. Just to borrow 2 potatoes. Song Yakin stood outside until her entire body trembled. Her face was red from the freezing wind. Every gust felt like a knife, cutting her skin. But after hearing the conversation inside, a deep sense of humiliation rose from her heart. She silently turned around. She didn't wait. She didn't ask again. By the time Hu Xiaojun came out with the potatoes, the gate was already empty. Humph. Didn't want them? Fine. Save me the trouble. If you have pride, then don't come asking next time. She muttered to herself. Then she locked the gate and looked toward the dark yard next door. The house was completely quiet. She closed her own door and went back inside. But Song Yakin hadn't gone home. She stood outside for a while. Then she ran toward old Jin's firewood pile at the east end of the village. She started searching through it. The entire pile was covered in snow. She brushed the snow away with her bare hands. Her fingers quickly turned red and stiff from the cold. She knew old Jin's family grew corn. The pile was full of corn stalks saved for winter heating. But right now, she had nowhere else to turn. She couldn't let her daughter go hungry, so she searched through everything she could. Even though her own stomach was growling. Even though hunger made her weak, she kept looking. Finally, between the dried corn stalks, she found a dark lump. In the northeast. People called it it was caused by a fungus that infected corn. It looked ugly, like a black growth on the corn. But it could actually be eaten. It could also be used as medicine. Song Yakin held the lump in her hands. For the first time tonight, a small smile appeared on her face. Then tears followed. She cried silently. At least, her daughter would have something. Just then, a sound came from old Jin's house. Song Yakin panicked. She dropped her head and ran. She rushed all the way home. After returning, she immediately lit the fire. The room slowly became warmer. Then she took some of the wumi she had found and put it into water. Soon, the water turned black. She placed the rest into an old red rooster bowl. Then she carried both bowls into the room. Nuno looked at the steaming bowls. Her eyes lit up. She thought her mother had made corn porridge. After all, at her grandparents' house, that was what she usually ate. But when she saw the black food inside, she tilted her head. Mom, what is this? Song Yakin forced a smile. Nuno, it's already dark. Mom couldn't find anything else. Just eat this for now. It tastes good. Look, Mom will show you. She picked up the bowl and drank some first. The wumi had turned into a black paste. It didn't really have a taste. It was almost like eating ash mixed with water. But after eating it, her mouth and teeth became completely black. Nuno looked at her mother. Then she rubbed her hungry stomach. She picked up her own bowl and began eating. Soon, her little face was covered in black. Seeing her daughter suffer with her, Song Yakin covered her face. Tears fell uncontrollably. Her heart felt like it was breaking. But what else could she do? After the miserable dinner, mother and daughter prepared the bedding. They lay down on the heated kong. Thankfully, the kong was still warm. Song Yakin held her daughter tightly. She turned off the oil lamp, but she couldn't sleep. How long would this life continue? She had never asked for much, just one proper meal a day. Just being able to keep her daughter at home. That alone would have been enough. But even that simple wish Chun Lu had never allowed her to have. The more she thought, the more hopeless she felt. Even after falling asleep, Nuno's stomach still made quiet hungry sounds. Song Yakin was hungry too. She was so weak that she could barely move. She tightened her belt around her waist. She didn't even dare remove her clothes while sleeping. Maybe if she fell asleep, she wouldn't have to think anymore. Meanwhile, the sky had completely turned dark. It was already past 8 at night. In the countryside, most families had already extinguished their lamps and gone to bed. But I had just returned to the village. My entire body was covered in ice crystals. My eyelashes had turned white. Even my fur hat was covered with frost. The journey back had taken more than an hour. The moment I entered the village, I went straight to old Wang's house. His house was already dark. Everyone had gone to sleep. I climbed over the fence quietly. Then I placed the fishing net beside his window. After gently knocking on the glass, I whispered, "Uncle Wong, are you asleep?" A moment later, there was movement inside. Who is that? Who comes climbing to someone's window in the middle of the night? Don't you know better? A wave of angry shouting came from inside. Then the kerosene lamp lit up. "Uncle Wong, it's me. Chun Lo. I just got back. I left your fishing net by the window. Come out for a second. I brought you something good." I couldn't help smiling that I hadn't caught the wild chicken I wanted, but I still had a few fish that I borrowed his net, so I had to give one back. That was the rule that my father had taught me that since I was young. Some rules could never be broken. The old saying was right. Every trade had its own rules, and hunters had theirs. "You little brat, you scared the life out of me." When Old Wong heard my voice, he cursed again. A moment later, he came outside wearing his cotton coat and carrying a kerosene lamp. The cold had already made him shiver. He lifted the lamp and looked me over. That was when I took out one of the crucian carp and held it up. "Hee hee, Uncle Wong. I borrowed your fishing net today and managed to catch a few fish. I figured I'd bring one over. Don't think it's too little. Tomorrow, if I manage to catch wild chickens, I'll bring you 2 big chicken legs." Before I even finished speaking, I handed him the fish. Old Wong was ready to scold me again. But the moment he saw the fish, his eyes lit up. In weather this cold, catching fish was no easy task. First, you had to break through the ice. Then you had to lower the net. After that, you had to sit there and wait. Standing outside for several hours in this kind of cold could easily damage your health. He never expected that I would actually stay out there for 4 or 5 hours and really come back with fish. "You're too reckless. You're young and full of energy, so you think you can handle anything. But what if your father found out? He'd break your legs." Old Wong looked at the fish again and smiled. "I'll take this. At least you still have some conscience. But you really need to fix that gambling habit. It's already this late. Go home." He happily accepted the fish. It had been a long time since his family had eaten meat. Thankfully, they still had some animal fat left to mix with rice. But who would have thought a gambler like me would actually bring him fish? It was strange. Hee hee. "Uncle Wong, I know your family still has some animal fat. Could you give me 2 spoonfuls? Just 2. I want to stew this fish when I get home. There are too many bones. I'm worried my daughter might get hurt eating it." I rubbed my hands together and smiled. Old Wong stared at me. "So that's why you came here in the middle of the night? You weren't just delivering fish. You wanted 2 spoonfuls of fat." He shook his head. "But today really is strange. You actually thought about your daughter. Isn't she staying at your mother-in-law's house?" Even though he complained, he still turned around and went inside. A short while later, he came back carrying a small bottle filled with white animal fat. "Yakin brought the child back from her parents' place today. I thought I'd improve their food a little. I've done too many wrong things before. I owe those 2 too much. I'm just trying to make up for it. Thank you, Uncle Wong. I'll head back now." I happily accepted the bottle. There wasn't much inside, but it was enough for 2 meals. "Go home. Stop wandering around at night." Old Wong waved his hand impatiently. If it were anyone else knocking on my window at this hour, I would have already chased them away. But it's you. You're lucky. Then he turned around, went inside, and locked the door. I climbed back over the wall. Holding the bottle of animal fat, I walked home under the moonlight. Back at home, Song Yakin had just fallen asleep. Then she heard the sound of someone pulling at the door. Her entire body went stiff. She immediately sat up and grabbed Nyonyo, who had also woken up. Who is it?" Her voice trembled. It was the middle of the night. Only the 2 of them were home. If some shameless person from the village came looking for trouble, she didn't even know what she could do. "Yakin, it's me. Open the door. I'm freezing out here." My voice came from outside. The moment she realized it was me, her fear became even stronger. Like a frightened bird, she hugged her daughter and moved toward the corner of the Kong. "Mom, can you send me back to Grandma's house? Well, Dad hit me." Nyonyo buried herself in her mother's arms. She already knew that the frightening father she barely remembered had returned. "Don't be afraid. Mom is here. He won't hit you." Song Yakin held her daughter tightly, but she still didn't open the door. I heard the movement inside. I knew Nyonyo was back. And I could imagine what condition they were in. They were afraid of me. The person who should have protected them had become the person they feared most. My heart sank. My hand slowly loosened from the door. I stood outside, breathing white mist into the freezing air. After a while, The outside became quiet. Song Yakin thought I had left. Only then did she slowly put Nyonyo back on the Kong and lie down again. But she still couldn't relax. She kept waiting for me to suddenly break in. Why had I returned so early today? Had I lost all my gambling money already? Had that final bag of grain disappeared too? She sighed. Time passed. Song Yakin still couldn't sleep. Nyonyo had fallen asleep again. Only then did she carefully get up, holding the kerosene lamp. She walked toward the kitchen. The kitchen connected directly to the outer room. The wooden door was covered in frost. The temperature outside had dropped even further. She stood there for a long time. Then she finally whispered, "Did you leave? Are you still there?" After a moment, "Yakin, I'm freezing. Please open the door. I promise I won't send Nyonyo away. I won't yell at you. I won't cause trouble. I promise." I had been standing outside for more than an hour and a half that I knew exactly what she feared. I didn't dare make a scene, that I didn't dare scare them. Originally, I had planned to spend the whole night outside, but my body was reaching its limit. When I heard her voice, I finally asked. Song Yakin was shocked that I was still outside, but she knew she couldn't leave me there forever. If I forced my way in or froze to death, either way, she would suffer. After hesitating, she walked to the door. She slowly removed the latch. Then she suddenly knelt down. When I opened the door, that was the first thing I saw. Song Yakin was kneeling there. Her hands were raised together. Her face was filled with pleading. "Chunlu, please stop. Nyonyo just fell asleep. Please let her stay here for one night. Tomorrow I'll take her back. Please, have some mercy on me." That moment hit me harder than anything. That I felt like lightning had struck my entire body. That my mind went blank. That my heart felt like it was being cut apart. What kind of things had I done? How much pain had I caused? For my own wife, just wanting to keep her daughter home for one night, had become something she needed to beg for on her knees. Even though my body was almost frozen stiff, I raised my hand and slapped myself twice. The pain from the cold and the impact was the only thing that could slightly reduce the guilt crushing me. And even then, only slightly. "Yakin, please stand up. It's too cold. You'll freeze. I won't come inside. I'll stay by the door. Just go back and sleep with Nyonyo." With those words, I stepped backward. Then I reached out and pushed the door closed. For 1 second, we looked at each other, and everything seemed silent. From Song Yakin's eyes, she saw me standing outside in the snow. My nose and mouth were covered with frost. The old rubber hat on my head had turned completely white. Even my breath was barely visible anymore. When the door closed, Song Yakin finally felt some of her fear ease. She slowly stood up. Her knees were aching from the cold. She waited for a while. Then she looked outside through the window. I was still there, sitting beside the wooden fence. My head lowered, both hands wrapped around the metal thermos cup. She couldn't see my face. For some reason, a strange feeling appeared in her heart. For a brief moment, she thought I looked pitiful. Standing outside all night in this weather, anyone would freeze. If something happened to me, her future would become even harder. But she had softened before so many times. And every time, what did she receive? More pain, more disappointment, more suffering. This man, could he really be trusted again? I stood there in the cold, but my mind was filled with memories from my previous life. Especially the look in Yakin's eyes before she died, that I would never forget it. She had asked for only one thing, a hug. That was all. But even at the end of her life, I had refused her. I had pushed away the woman who had endured everything because of me. That I don't know how long I stayed outside. Snow began falling again. That my body had already become numb. That my thoughts were becoming blurry. The sky was still dark. I desperately wished for sunrise. Maybe the sunlight would bring some warmth. Otherwise, I might really freeze to death tonight. And I never expected Song Yakin to feel sorry for me. Because even I knew the truth, that I didn't deserve forgiveness. The things I had done were too terrible. Creak. Just when I felt like I was about to lose consciousness, the door suddenly opened, but no one appeared. Only a cold voice came from inside. "Get inside. Stop pretending out there." Song Yakin said that and immediately turned around. She didn't dare actually leave me outside. If I became desperate and started causing trouble, nobody would sleep tonight. That I heard her words. My eyes lit up. I forced my frozen legs to move. Step by step, I staggered toward the house. Even closing the door was difficult. My fingers were too stiff. I could only hook onto the door and slowly pull it shut. The kitchen wasn't warm, but compared to outside, it was like another world that I sat beside the stove and absorbed the last bit of heat left there. Half an hour passed before my hands and feet finally began warming up. The pain and itching came afterward that I had probably developed frostbite, but I ignored it that I looked at the closed bedroom door that I still didn't go inside. Instead, I turned around and picked up several pieces of firewood stacked against the wall that I pushed them into the stove. Puffed. I struck a match. The small flame appeared. Then I took out a piece of pine wood and lit it. In the Northeast, this kind of pine resin wood was called songmingzi. It was formed after dead pine trees aged for many years. The natural oils inside the wood remained highly flammable. Unlike ordinary wood, it burned longer and was much harder to extinguish. It was the best material for starting a fire. I carefully placed it beneath the firewood. Then I added some dried corn leaves. Soon, flames began growing inside the stove that I turned around and lifted the lid of the pot. But then I noticed a bowl beside it that I almost knocked it over. When I picked it up and looked inside, my expression changed. The bowl was filled with black paste that I brought it closer. That familiar yet painful smell hit me. Wumi, the black fungus-like substance that grew on corn. People sometimes ate it when they had nothing else, but it was never real food that it could never fill a hungry stomach. Even in a time when resources were scarce, this was something most people didn't even want. And yet, my wife and daughter had eaten this tonight. That my heart felt like it was being stabbed. That I knelt on the ground. That I covered my mouth. Tears silently rolled down my face. I hated myself. That I was useless. I was worse than useless. I had destroyed my own family. There was no grain left because of me. No one in the village wanted to lend us anything anymore. Because of my reputation, my wife had not only suffered because of poverty, she had suffered because of me. She had to endure people's judgment. She couldn't even have one proper meal as a husband. I had completely failed, but regret alone was meaningless. That I couldn't change the past, that I could only change what happened next. So I wiped my face and forced myself to stand. Then I prepared the little food I had brought back, the pine sparrow eggs, the fish in my metal cup, the handful of river shrimp, everything I had worked so hard to obtain. That I carefully thawed them and placed them into the pot. Then I poured in the animal fat old Wong gave me. That I moved quietly. That I didn't want to wake Yakin and Nyonyo. When the fat melted and heated up, I placed the washed shrimp and fish into the pot. The house had almost no seasoning, but after cooking in hot oil, even these simple ingredients released an incredible aroma. The smell of fish, the smell of shrimp, the smell of real food. That in this poor rural village, in this difficult era, a meal like this was a luxury. That I found the salt jar. Only a little remained. That I sprinkled it into the pot. Then I added the pine sparrow eggs, poured in water, and covered the lid. After that, I sat beside the stove, watching the flames, feeling the small amount of warmth. The smell slowly spread through the kitchen. For the first time in a long while, the house no longer felt completely empty. Inside the bedroom, Song Yakin wasn't asleep. She was still afraid. She worried that after warming up, I would return to my old self, that I would enter the room, that I would hurt her, that I would drive Nyonyo away again. She held her sleeping daughter tightly. Every sound from the kitchen made her heart jump. She kept imagining the door suddenly opening. She imagined the man she feared rushing inside. What was I doing? Had I really frozen myself badly? Why hadn't I entered the room? Why was I listening to her? The unknown was often the most frightening thing. The quieter I became, the more uneasy she felt. Thankfully, morning was almost here. Once the sun came up, she could send Nyonyo back to her parents' house. Then there would be no more trouble. Even if it meant her daughter would cry and miss her again. Mom! Suddenly, Nyonyo opened her eyes. Outside, the sky was beginning to brighten. Song Yakin looked down and saw her daughter staring at her curiously. It's not morning yet. Sleep a little longer. Only when she looked at her daughter did the pain in her heart become slightly lighter. Her child was the only thing keeping her going. The only reason she had continued living. Mom, do you smell something really good? Smell it. Nyonyo moved her little nose, like a hungry kitten. Only then did Song Yakin notice it. The smell that a rich, warm aroma was filling the house, and the Kong was getting warmer too. She frowned. The smell was coming from the kitchen, but where did the meat come from? Was Chun-Luk cooking? Impossible. The thought itself seemed ridiculous that I didn't even know how to cook before. And even if I did, why would I prepare food myself? Most importantly, where did the meat come from? The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. She decided not to think about it. She closed her eyes and held her daughter again. But Nyonya was already awake, and after smelling the food, her little face was full of longing to in this era. Being able to eat enough was already considered fortunate. Sometimes, people went an entire month without tasting meat. Adults and children alike dreamed of a proper meal. Even at her grandparents' home, Nyonya could at least eat enough. But meat? That depended on luck. Meanwhile, I was still in the kitchen. I slowly stood up, then I lifted the lid. A wave of steam rushed out. The rich smell of fish and shrimp filled the room. Even I was starving. Before leaving home, I hadn't eaten anything. Then I had spent hours freezing outside, looking at the fish, shrimp, and eggs inside the iron pot. I wanted nothing more than to eat immediately, but I held myself back. This food wasn't for me. It was for my wife and daughter. It was meant to improve their health. It was my first step toward making up for everything I had taken from them. I put the sorghum rice I had carried back into the pot, as well as the grains slowly cooked. A familiar aroma began spreading through the kitchen. I had been starving for so long that I finally couldn't hold myself back. I grabbed a few handfuls with my fingers and stuffed them into my mouth. The simple sweetness of the coarse grain felt unbelievably satisfying to that moment. Filling my stomach was the only thing I cared about. Once the soup began bubbling and the fish and shrimp were fully cooked, I quickly found 2 chipped bowls. Using a wooden spatula, I carefully transferred the food. One bowl held the fish and shrimp. The other was filled with pine sparrow eggs, along with the rich soup. Just smelling it was enough to make someone hungry. Looking at the 2 bowls of steaming food, I finally felt a little satisfaction. I carried them to the bedroom door and gently knocked. Yakin, open the door for a moment. I cooked fish and shrimp for you and our daughter. It's morning now. You two should eat something. I kept my voice low. I didn't want to scare them. I knew better than anyone. Everything that had happened was because of me. The only thing I could do now was slowly make up for my mistakes, slowly earn back their trust. Inside the room, Song Yakin was startled when she heard my voice. She never expected that I had actually brought back fish. In a wonder, Nunyo said she smelled something good last night. Song Yakin had already sat up. She wore an old cotton jacket over a patched floral vest. Mom, is it true? Did Dad really make fish for us? Nunyo looked up at her with expectation in her eyes. Although I had driven her away before and forced her to live at her grandparents' home, a child her age didn't truly understand hatred to her. Parents were still the closest people in the world. Even the painful memories faded quickly. She only knew one thing. Her father seemed to dislike her. He was different from other fathers. Whenever she heard him call her name, she still instinctively wanted to get close. She wanted to make him stop being angry. She wanted him to like her. But Song Yakin didn't care about a single fish. What worried her was something else. She wondered if this was another trick, another temporary kindness, another sweet promise before everything returned to normal, because she had seen this happen too many times. But when she saw Nyonya rubbing her hungry stomach, when she saw her daughter's hopeful eyes, she hesitated. Then she put on her clothes and shoes. Slowly, she opened the door. Yakin, take the food. I won't come inside. You two eat first. When you're done, you can give me the bowl. I smiled. I tried to make myself look as harmless as possible. Song Yakin didn't know what had happened to me. She didn't know what I was thinking, but she remembered that her daughter hadn't eaten properly last night. She forced down her fear and took the bowls from my hands. Before she could say anything, I closed the door myself. Song Yakin froze. Nunyo had already climbed down from the calm. She stood there staring at the bowls. Her eyes moved back and forth. Her little mouth held one finger. She couldn't look away. Song Yakin pushed aside her doubts. She placed the food on the table beside her daughter. Nunyo, put on your blanket. Don't get cold. The little girl immediately leaned forward. She picked up the chopsticks. Her movements were awkward, but she carefully picked up a small river shrimp. Then she handed it toward her mother. Mom, you eat first. Song Yakin froze. Then she smiled. Her daughter's small act of care warmed her heart. She opened her mouth and ate the shrimp. It's delicious. Nyonya, you eat too. She gently touched her daughter's head. In that freezing room, the love between mother and daughter felt warmer than the fire itself. The two of them sat on the Kong and enjoyed a meal they had not dreamed of having. Nuno kept picking up fish, shrimp, and eggs. Every bite came with a happy smile. So good. So delicious. Mom, if only we could eat meat every day. Song Yakin's expression slowly changed. The happiness was real, but it was temporary. They had been hungry for so many days. Suddenly eating such a meal almost made her believe life could really become better. But reality quickly returned. The sky was getting brighter. Soon she might have to send Nyonya back to her grandparents. As for why I had suddenly changed, she couldn't understand it. And she didn't dare hope. Looking at her innocent daughter, Song Yakin felt a painful sadness that a wish like eating meat every day, to Nyonya, it was just a simple dream. But to her mother, it was something almost impossible. Seeing that there was still half a fish and 2 eggs left, Song Yakin asked softly, Nyonya, why aren't you eating? The little girl stared at the remaining food. She licked her lips. She clearly wanted more, but after hesitating, she smiled. It's for Dad. Her voice was childish, but firm. As if saving food for her father was the only thing she could do. Outside the door, I was eating my sorghum rice. When I heard those words, my hands froze. The coarse grain that had been difficult to swallow suddenly stuck in my throat. My eyes filled with tears that I wiped them away with my large hands. Thinking about how I had treated my daughter in my previous life, I wanted to hit myself again. How could I have been so cruel? How could I have hurt the child who still cared about me? At that moment, I truly understood my mistakes were far worse than I had allowed myself to admit. That a while later, Song Yakin brought out the bowl. When I took it, she hesitated. She wanted to say something that I immediately understood. She was thinking about sending Nyonya back. I spoke first. Don't send her away. I'll sleep for a while. Then I'll go back into the mountains. I'll try to bring back more meat tonight. After a pause, I continued. I know you don't believe me. You have every reason not to. But Yakin, from now on, don't reject everything I do for you and our daughter. Just treat it as my way of making up for what I did. After saying that, I took the bowl and walked back to the stove. I ate slowly, and tears kept falling. Song Yakin stood nearby watching me. Her heart was full of complicated feelings. She didn't know how long this version of me would last. She didn't know when the old Chun Lu would return. After a long silence, she closed the door. After finishing the meal, I washed the bowls and chopsticks. Then I leaned against the firewood pile in the corner. The plan to catch wild chickens that night was completely forgotten. I was too exhausted. The moment my body relaxed, I fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept. But eventually, my nose started itching. Slowly, I opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was a small, adorable face. A little girl was holding a piece of straw. Her cheeks were puffed up. She was quietly mumbling something. Nyonya. It was my daughter. She had secretly come over while I was sleeping. She was teasing me. You're really my dad? The little girl tilted her head. Her eyes were full of curiosity. In her memory, her father's face had already become blurry. She only felt that I looked familiar. That was why she instinctively wanted to get closer. I smiled. Of course I'm your dad. Did you miss Dad? Was the fish last night good? Seeing my daughter again, seeing her at this age, my heart almost melted. Especially when I remembered my previous life. Back then, I had everything. Money, status, a successful career, but my daughter had completely cut ties with me. We became strangers. She hated me, and I deserved it, because I had failed to give her fatherly love when she needed it most, because her mother had spent her entire life suffering, because Yakin became sick after years of hardship and eventually left this world with regret. Thinking about it made my heart ache. I remembered rushing to the hospital in panic in my previous life, but I still failed to see Yakin one last time. That regret stayed with me forever, and I still remembered the hatred in my daughter's eyes. Unable to control my emotions, I wiped away my tears. Then I reached out. I wanted to hug my daughter, but at that moment, Song Yakin returned after going outside to use the restroom. When she saw me reaching toward Nyonya, she panicked. She rushed forward, and before I could touch my daughter, she grabbed Nyonya into her arms. I watched Song Yakin carry Nyonya back into the room. Mom told you not to come outside. Why don't you listen? Come back inside. She hugged our daughter tightly and hurried back into the bedroom. Her heart was still racing. If she had come back just a little later, she didn't even dare imagine what might have happened. In her eyes, I had already lost my humanity. A man like me couldn't be changed. even if I suddenly acted differently. Even if I showed a little kindness toward her and our daughter, she knew it was only temporary. 3 days. Maybe even less. That was all it would take before the old Chun Lu returned. The worst part was, I had a history of doing unforgivable things. There was one time when I had lost everything gambling to in my madness. I had even planned to sell Nyonyo to an elderly couple who had no children. When Song Yakin found out, she knelt on the ground and begged me. She cried. She pleaded. But I only beat her until she collapsed. In the end, she had to borrow money from her parents to pay off my gambling debt. Only then could she bring her daughter back. After that incident, she never dared let Nyonyo stay alone with me. That was one of the reasons she sent our daughter to her parents' home. That my hands were still hanging in the air. I watched Song Yakin carry Nyonyo away like she was protecting her from a stranger. Only then did I remember everything I had done in my previous life. No wonder she was afraid of me. No wonder she never believed me. Seeing that it was already getting late, I knew something that if I stayed here, they wouldn't feel comfortable. I slowly stood up from the firewood pile that I walked to the door and gently knocked. Inside, Song Yakin was helping Nyonyo put on clothes. She wiped away her tears. Her heart was full of reluctance. Then she heard the knock. Her body stiffened. All right. I know. I'll send Nyonyo back now. You don't need to remind me. She gathered her courage and shouted toward the door. Even if she was going to be hurt again, she needed to say it. This was her own daughter. How could a father treat his own child like this? How could giving birth to a daughter become something shameful? How could a little girl become a burden? Outside the door, I froze. I immediately realized she had misunderstood me. Yakin, that's not what I mean. I wanted to tell you. I'm going out for a while. Don't send Nyonyo back. She's already home. Just wait here. I'll go find some food. I won't let you two go hungry. After saying that, I sighed. But I still didn't open the door. I didn't want to force her to face me. Instead, I pushed open the outer door and walked away. The freezing air hit my face. The cold quickly cleared my sleepy mind. Inside the house, Song Yakin stopped moving. For a moment, she thought she had heard wrong. Mom, that sounded like Dad. He said I don't have to go back to Grandma's house. Does that mean I can sleep with you tonight? Nyonyo looked up at her mother with hope in her eyes. Song Yakin's heart became tangled. How could she not want her daughter to stay? She only sent her away because Chun Lu forced her to. But then she remembered. This man's mood changed without warning. Who knew where he was going now? Maybe he would go drink. Maybe he would gamble again. And if he lost, if he came back angry, if he saw Nyonyo still here, the entire house would become chaos again. Could she really trust words he said while calm? A person like Chun Lu. How long could this kindness last? Thinking about it, Song Yakin felt like her heart was being pierced. She wiped away her tears. Nyonyo, listen to Mom. Go back to Grandma's house first. After a few days, Mom will bring you home again. The hope in the little girl's eyes disappeared instantly, but she still reached out and hugged her mother's neck. Mother and daughter sat on the kong and cried quietly. Outside, I rubbed my hands together. Today, no matter what happened, I had to bring back a wild chicken that I wanted to give my wife and daughter a better meal. With my memories from my previous life, I wasn't a professional hunter like my father. But I still knew far more than ordinary people. The problem was my equipment. If only I had a hunting rifle. Unfortunately, with my current reputation, even though I knew several families in the village owned guns, nobody would lend one to me. Not after everything I had done. And I had nothing to trade. That I was so poor that my family couldn't even eat properly. What could I offer? Thankfully, I had already prepared traps. After one night, there should be some results. That I could also catch some fish. Maybe search the mountain for bird nests. At least I wouldn't let them starve. But I still wanted something bigger. With my ability to sense and predict animal movements, finding wild chicken tracks should not be difficult. Thinking about it, my excitement grew. That I headed back toward Old Wong's house. By now, morning had arrived. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open and walked inside. The kitchen fire was still burning. That a pot of hot water sat above the stove. They were clearly having breakfast. Uncle Wong, are you home? I walked in. Old Wong was sitting on the edge of the kong. Eating. In his hand was a dark corn bun. He was drinking wild vegetable soup. And inside the soup was the crucian carp I had brought him yesterday. Beside him, an old woman wearing a red headscarf was eating happily. When Old Wong saw me, he smiled. You little brat. Coming this early? Are you here to eat my breakfast? He patted the Kong beside him. Come sit. The fish you brought yesterday. Your aunt used it to make soup this morning. I was hungry too. Without enough strength, how could I chase wild chickens? And seeing them eat made my stomach start growling. Little Goo, don't stand there. Your uncle told you to sit, so sit. We made plenty of corn buns this morning. I'll get you a bowl. Wang Annie was warm-hearted. She started getting off the Kong that I quickly stepped forward and stopped her. Annie, don't move. I'll get it myself. I smiled. Then I walked over to the old wooden cabinet. Back then, every household in the Northeast had one of these cabinets. They were practical, water-resistant, cold-resistant. They didn't look pretty because they weren't painted. After years of use, the wood turned dark, but I didn't care that I took out a large rooster-patterned bowl and a pair of wooden chopsticks. Then I came back that I accepted the corn bun from Annie, filled a bowl with soup, and started eating. Big bites, warm food. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Old Wang and his wife watched me and laughed. Little Elu, you really do have your father's skills. Your father was famous in these villages. He was one of the best mountain hunters around. With a hunting rifle, he even dared to chase black bears. Those village youngsters went into the mountains many times. They broke through the ice on the reservoirs. But they couldn't bring back much. You alone caught 2 fish yesterday. Not bad. Are you planning to enter the mountains today? Old Wang finished eating that he picked up his tobacco pipe, pressed the tobacco down, then placed it near the fire basin to warm it. The fire basin was just a large clay container made from yellow soil and water. During winter, people burned wood into charcoal and placed it inside for warmth. I wiped my nose. The cold air outside had made it run non-stop. Yeah, Uncle Wang. Yesterday, I wanted to catch wild chickens. I set traps and scattered bait. But those birds are too clever. I sat there for half the night and didn't even see a shadow. Without a hunting rifle, even if I find one, unless it runs into the trap, I can only chase it through the snow. While speaking, I looked toward old Wang, because I knew this old man definitely had something useful. He just never showed it to anyone. The village did have a few families who owned hunting rifles. Shueju's family has one. Baoku's family has one too. Kaiying's family also has one. But if you go asking to borrow one, you definitely won't get it. Old Wang thought for a moment. Then his eyes suddenly lit up. Wait. My family actually has a bow. It was left behind by my wife's mother before she passed away. See if you can use it. There are matching iron arrows too. He immediately got up, put on his shoes, and started searching through cabinets and boxes. Wang Annie smiled from the side. That's a horn bow. My mother said that during the Republic era, my grandfather was a militia instructor. He was especially good at riding horses and shooting arrows. That horn bow belonged to him. By our generation, my family only had daughters. Nobody knew how to use weapons anymore. My sisters didn't want it, so I brought it here. Hearing that, I became interested, especially when she mentioned a horn bow. That was a rare thing. Then, found it. Old Wang pulled out a cloth bundle from the bottom of an old box that he carefully opened it. Inside was a beautiful horn bow. The body was made from horn and wood. The bowstring was still tight. It looked sturdy despite its age. Beside it was a bag of iron arrows. The arrowheads were sharp. The shafts were straight. Take a look. This bow has been maintained pretty well. It's old, but it should still work. Old Wang handed it to me. There was a hint of expectation in his eyes that I took the horn bow and carefully examined it. Then I gently pulled the string. The moment I felt the resistance, a sense of respect rose in my heart. This was not an ordinary bow. I lifted it slightly. The weight surprised me. It was at least 20 kilograms. Heavy, solid. Without enough strength, there was no way someone could draw it. I tried pulling the string further. The powerful force immediately shook my arm. This kind of horn bow is completely different from ordinary wooden bows. I thought to myself that a normal single-piece wooden bow was simple to make, but its power and range were limited. A composite horn bow stored much more energy. It required serious strength to fully draw. Even if I couldn't pull it into a perfect full curve right now, that didn't mean I couldn't use it. The greater elasticity meant the arrow could leave faster, the range was longer, and during hunting, I could strike from a safer distance. I understood. From now on, most of my hunting would probably rely on this bow. Unless I could somehow get a suitable rifle, this weapon was already the better choice. Hunters had different methods: gun hunting, bow hunting, And even the most dangerous method, knife hunting, me. Gun hunting was like catching fish with a net. Bow hunting was like fishing with a rod. Both required skill, but the latter demanded more patience and technique. Still, I wasn't looking for a challenge. That I only wanted one thing: to improve my family's life. To let my wife and daughter eat meat every day. That I looked up at old Wong and his wife. My eyes were full of gratitude. Uncle Wong, Andy, this is extremely important to me. Thank you. I'll return it as soon as I'm done. Old Wong laughed and shook his head. That he patted my shoulder. This thing sitting in our house does nothing but collect dust. If we leave it long enough, insects might even ruin it. Your father was a famous hunter back then. You're his son. You inherited his skills. This bow belongs with you. You just wasted too many years being lazy. He pointed toward the mountains. These hills connect to the Shaoxing'an Mountains. Go deeper inside, and you can find almost anything. For ordinary people, living near mountains means relying on mountains. But for experienced hunters, that mountain is a treasure. You were just unwilling to work before. Now that you've finally figured things out, that's a good thing. Take it. Consider it yours. Hearing those words, I nodded heavily. A strange warmth filled my chest. After finishing breakfast, I picked up the bowls, but Wang Auntie immediately slapped the back of my hand. You're a grown man. Why are you washing dishes? Go do what you need to do. She laughed and started cleaning herself. That I smiled helplessly. Then I said goodbye to old Wong. That I also borrowed some rope. With the bow on my back, I walked out of the house. Now that I had such a powerful weapon, even though I still couldn't draw it perfectly, as long as it wasn't a wild boar, a normal pheasant or hare wouldn't be able to escape. One arrow would be enough. But wild boars were different. That a single person had almost no chance against one. Among Northeast hunters, there was an old saying. The hardest prey to hunt was, first, the boar, second, the black bear, third, the tiger. Wild boars were the most dangerous. My father once told me that boars in pine forests were especially terrifying. They often rubbed themselves against pine trees that produced sticky resin. Then they rolled in dirt. Over time, the mud and resin formed a natural armor. Even bullets could fail to penetrate. If I encountered one now, I would turn around and hesitation that I had finally been given another life. That I hadn't even given Yakin and Nyonyo a better future, yet that if I died now, that would be the most ridiculous rebirth story imaginable. After eating, I had energy again, and my younger body was different, strong, full of power. It felt like I could never run out of strength. Half an hour later, I reached the mountain. First, I returned to the place where I had set my traps yesterday. That I immediately saw something. The traps had caught something. 2 bird traps were still hanging. 2 sparrows had already frozen stiff. They must have been caught during the night. The millet scattered on the snow showed signs of being pecked. I carefully removed the birds. Then I placed them into the basket on my back. That a smile appeared on my face. Finally, a little harvest. Tonight, Nyonyo could eat roasted sparrows. After cleaning them, I could skewer them with wooden sticks, roast them over the stove, then brush them with homemade soybean paste. The taste would be incredible. I picked up the fishing net again, placed it into the ice hole from yesterday. After everything was ready, I clapped my hands. That I was about to head deeper into the forest to search trees for bird nests and eggs. But before I could take another step, a sharp pain suddenly struck my mind. Then an image appeared. A black shadow, moving quickly beneath the snow, jumping, turning, then disappearing underground in an instant. My heart moved. I immediately turned around. I scanned the area. Then I slowly began searching nearby. Finally, I had found something valuable. I quickly found the tracks. They matched the image I had seen in my mind. The snowy fields around the ridge were dangerous. One wrong step, and I could fall into a hidden snow pit. It might take a long time to climb back out. But I moved carefully, step by step. The snow only reached below my knees. I never lost my footing. I took the composite horn bow from my back. The arrow was already placed on the string. I just hadn't drawn it yet. I wasn't sure how accurate my aim would be, but I had to try. After all, I had followed my father into the mountains before. I had seen him hunt. I had even watched him take down a black bear. Those memories still remained clear. At that moment, my excitement was building. From the vision I had seen earlier, I knew there was a mountain hare nearby. In the Northeast, people called them shantiatsi, wild rabbits. Crunch. Because the temperature was so low, the surface of some snow had frozen solid. Every step made a cracking sound. Normally, that would easily alert prey. But I wasn't worried. For an animal like a mountain hare, fear could actually become my advantage. Once frightened, it would lose control. It would jump. And that was when mistakes happened. Since I still couldn't see it, I had to force it out. I reached the area where it was hiding. Then I crouched down. I didn't move. I scanned the surroundings like a radar. I grabbed some snow, squeezed it into a ball, and took a small bite to relieve my thirst. Then I threw snowballs in different directions. Hunting was a contest of patience. If you couldn't outlast the prey, you went home empty-handed. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait long. The snowballs finally worked. Suddenly, I noticed a small black spot moving on the snowy surface ahead. Then 2 ears appeared. Then a furry head. A gray mountain rabbit. The moment I saw it, excitement surged through me. Almost instinctively, I lifted the bow. I took a few careful steps closer. Then I stopped. The distance was already more than 10 meters. I couldn't get any closer. The rabbit was preparing to run. This was my chance. I raised the bow, pulled, released. The horn bow reached a half-drawn position in one smooth motion. The arrow flew, but my aim was still poor. The arrow landed directly beside the rabbit, burying itself into the frozen snow. The rabbit panicked. It immediately sprinted away. Its speed shocked me. The little creature moved across the snow like lightning, leaving a trail of footprints behind. It was about to disappear down the hillside. I chased after it. I stayed locked on the rabbit. Every step had to be careful. Point one mistake, point one slip, and I would lose my chance. The rabbit and I continued racing through the snowy wilderness. I breathed heavily. White mist poured from my mouth. When I saw the rabbit jump down the slope, my heart tightened. But I didn't rush. I knew following it blindly would only put me in danger. Fortunately, an old tree beside the slope had a branch extending outward, almost like it was waiting for me. I quickly hooked my leg around the trunk. My body leaned forward. I stabilized myself. Then I raised the bow again. I closed my left eye, focused with my right. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. In the frozen wilderness. That was the only sound. I knew this was my final chance. If the rabbit reached the weeds covered by snow ahead, it would disappear completely, like a drop of water falling into the ocean. My prediction ability showed me its next movement. But that also meant I only had one chance to shoot. The horn bow felt extremely heavy in my hands. As I pulled the string, my arms began burning. Every muscle was pushed to its limit. I took a deep breath. Then I shouted. My right hand released. The arrow shot forward, like a black streak cutting through the at first. It looked like the arrow was going to miss. The trajectory was wrong. Normally, it would have passed harmlessly by. But then, the rabbit jumped over a small mound. Its body rose into the air. And at that exact moment, the arrow pierced through it. The black arrow continued downward and struck the ground. Everything happened in an instant. I stared at the scene. Then a smile slowly spread across my face. I did it. I actually did it. But I knew something. Going downhill was easy. Going back up was hard. Recovering the rabbit safely would not be simple. I needed to find a careful route back. Still, the joy of success overwhelmed everything else. I climbed down from the tree, bent low, moved slowly down the slope. After finally reaching the ground, I walked toward the rabbit. A strong sense of achievement filled my chest. I grabbed the black arrow. The rabbit was still hanging from it. It hadn't completely lost its life yet. What a big rabbit. Taking this home, whether roasted or stewed, it would be enough to let Yakin and Nyonyo eat until they were satisfied. People in this era rarely had enough fat in their bodies. Even an adult woman could eat several pounds of pork and still feel like she hadn't had enough. That was why meat was so precious. A little bit of oil and flavor could make people happy for days. In some villages, people even did desperate things just for a better meal. Not because they wanted trouble, because hunger changed people. In this era, staying alive wasn't impossible. As long as someone worked hard, they could survive. But eating well, having real meat, that was another matter entirely. A wild rabbit like this was extremely valuable. It could even become a reason for people to fight over opportunities. Thinking about that made me ashamed of myself. In my previous life, I had been given everything. I had a strong body. A good appearance. I was considered one of the better young men in the surrounding villages. I had married a woman like Song Yakin. Beautiful, kind, capable. Yet I had ruined everything that I thought about old Wu from the west side of the village. He had a disability and wasn't considered an ideal husband by others, but he treated his wife like treasure. Every day, he worried that he might lose her. He worked hard that he valued her, and because of that, their life became better and better compared to him. What had I done? I had destroyed the best thing in my life. That I took a deep breath. The day was getting late. That I needed to hurry home. That I had to clean the rabbit, and I also needed to send 2 rabbit legs to old Wang. That was the rule, that a hunter never kept everything for himself, that I had used someone else's bout, that I had brought back game, that I needed to share the harvest. If I hid it and refused to give anything back, people would remember. They would talk. Over time, the entire village would lose trust in me. And in a place like this, once trust was gone, borrowing tools, asking for help, or relying on neighbors would become almost impossible. I held the arrow with the rabbit still attached tightly in my hand. My only thought was getting home. But just as I was about to climb back up the slope, a scene suddenly appeared in my mind. Not far away, on the hillside to my right, there was something hidden there. This wasn't as simple. Guess.it was that strange ability I had gained after being reborn. That I couldn't explain it, but every time it appeared, it meant there was something worth finding. I hesitated for a moment. Then I made a decision. I tied the rabbit to the hemp rope around my waist and carefully moved toward the right side of the mountain. Every step was difficult. The frozen snow was slippery. Loose stones shifted beneath my feet. Several times, I almost lost my balance. Only by grabbing nearby branches and tree trunks did I managed to steady myself. That I knew very clearly, in this empty wilderness, getting injured was terrifying. Especially breaking a leg. No one would find me here, and I would likely freeze to death before anyone even knew what happened. But fortunately, after a difficult climb, I finally reached the bare hillside. That my clothes were soaked with sweat, and my breathing was heavy. Cold air turned every breath into white mist. But I didn't stop. My eyes quickly searched the ground. Then I found it. A small patch of land, covered by black dead leaves and fallen branches. It was the place receiving the most sunlight. The surrounding snow had melted away. The soil underneath was damp, and warm air was slowly rising from the ground. It was completely different from the frozen surroundings. Without hesitation, I started digging. Layer by layer, the soil was pushed aside. Slowly, something unusual began to appear. When the final layer of dirt was removed, my eyes widened. A ginseng plant. Although it wasn't very large, the moment my fingers brushed over its surface, I could feel the passage of time hidden within its detailed texture. I carefully examined every part. The long curved root crown, the thick, evenly distributed root structure, the fine roots spreading around the main body. Everything matched. This was an old wild ginseng. At least 20 or 30 years old. People in the village always said this mountain was a blessed place. There were rumors that underground hot springs flowed beneath it. Even during the coldest days of winter, the areas touched by those warm waters would never completely freeze. That explained this place. The ground was warm. The soil was wet. Maybe there really was a hidden spring underneath. This is a good thing. I couldn't stop smiling. If I take this to the state-run store, I should be able to exchange it for several big Unity notes. My hands trembled slightly. Not because of the cold, because I knew what this meant. This could change my family's life. That I could buy Yakin a proper set of clothes. That I could buy Nyonyo some Guangdong hard candy. That little girl had suffered too much. I owed them both too much. On this lonely mountain slope, I felt like I had discovered a treasure. Wild ginseng wasn't just money. It represented hope. That a chance to rebuild everything. I carefully wrapped the ginseng and placed it inside my small cloth bag. I treated it like something priceless. This unexpected discovery had solved the problem in front of me, and maybe it had changed the future of my family. By now, the sky was already getting dark. That I didn't dare waste any more time. Carrying my harvest, I hurried toward home. When I passed by the traps I had set earlier, there were still no pheasants caught. That made me confused. Could those birds also be hiding during winter? After spending half the day running around the mountains, I finally returned to the village. The sun on the western horizon was about to disappear. The evening glow burned red like fire. People called this the sunset of the northern frontier. A scene unique to the cold winters of northeast China. That I kept the rabbit hidden inside my coat. My old cotton jacket covered everything. whenever I passed villagers and they greeted me. I didn't dare make big movements that I was afraid the rabbit's tail would be exposed. This wasn't because I was being selfish, that it was because of the old hunting rules my father had taught me. When a hunter returned with prey, if someone greeted him on the road, he was expected to share some meat. That tradition came from generations of hunters. Mountain hunting was dangerous, that a person could get injured anytime. And deep in the wilderness, no one might find you, that if you had no reputation in the village, people might walk past you without helping. But if you treated others well, shared your harvest, maintained good relationships, that kindness might save your life. Someday, this was how people survived in remote mountain villages. The people here were simple, but they were also tough. There were still some bad-hearted people who could cause trouble behind your back. But right now, I couldn't even afford to think about sharing that. My wife and daughter were still struggling to eat. They were still hungry. When my family finally had enough food, when we could eat meat whenever we wanted, then I would repay these relationships. The door wasn't locked. Just as I placed my hand on the wooden door, I heard footsteps behind me. Crunch, crunch. Someone was walking across the frozen snow. That I turned around and saw Song Yakin. She was wiping tears from her face with her sleeve. That my heart immediately tightened. Yakin? What happened? Why are you crying? I quickly walked toward her, but she only glanced at me. Then she ignored me. She pushed open the door and walked inside. That I hurried after her. Once inside, I placed the rabbit and the 2 sparrows on the floor. Then I put the fish from my metal cup onto the stove. After that, I entered the room. Yakin was sitting on the Kong with her back facing me. She was staring out the window, silent. She looked hurt. That I looked around the room. Then I realized something. Nyonyo wasn't there. Yakin, where's Nyonyo? Didn't I tell you I would bring food back for you too? She slowly turned around. Her eyes were red, but she didn't answer. I could tell she wanted to say something, but she was holding herself back because she was afraid that saying too much would anger me, afraid that another argument would begin, afraid that Nyonyo being gone would only become another reason for me to lose control. Say something. Please. Don't tell me. You sent Nyonyo back to your parents' house? My voice became louder because I was anxious. The moment my voice rose, Yakin flinched. Her eyes blinked, like she was expecting me to explode. I didn't send her back. What else could I do? Wait for you to come home and take your anger out on her. Wait until midnight when everyone suffers again. I sent her away early so you wouldn't get angry. Is that wrong too? What exactly do you want from me? Keeping our daughter here is wrong. Sending her away is wrong. Tell me, what am I supposed to do? Her voice trembled. I stood there silently. My chest felt like it was being crushed. That I wanted to hit my head against the wall. No matter what I said, no matter what I did. She simply couldn't believe me anymore. I didn't mean that. I wasn't blaming you. Why can't you trust me once? But my words sounded so powerless, because I understood. After everything I had done, why would she believe me? Yakin looked at me with tears in her eyes. Can I still trust you? Do I still dare? Chunlu, I'm begging you. Please stop torturing me. What else do you want me to do? If you want, I'll kneel. And she actually knelt on the Kong. My entire body froze. In that moment, I saw the woman who had once loved me completely. The woman who had once trusted me, now reduced to begging me for mercy. Inside her heart, she was silently asking the heavens, please, bring back the man who loved me. Bring back the husband who cared about me. What happened to him? Why did he become like this? I rushed forward the moment I saw her kneeling. I wrapped my arms around Song Yakin, but she immediately began struggling with all her strength. She fought harder than a pig being held down before New Year's, especially after eating a proper meal yesterday and having some fish. She had finally regained a little strength, but I was exhausted too. After running through the mountains all day, my entire body was worn out. Even so, I held on. I didn't let go until her emotions slowly calmed down. Only then did I loosen my arms. Yakin had also gradually settled down. I'll go bring Nyonyo back. Will that finally be enough? So you won't have to worry about whether I'll do something wrong. I happened to catch a rabbit today. I'll cut off 2 legs and take them to your parents. After saying that, I walked into the kitchen and started preparing the rabbit. Song Yakin froze. She looked at me as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard, that I went hunting. The man who once swore he would never hunt again. Memories from a few years ago surfaced in her mind. Back then, because of hunting, I had a huge argument with my father. The fight became so intense that it almost turned physical. After that, I swore I would never touch hunting again. At that time, I hadn't fallen into gambling yet. I still worked hard in the production team. I was considered a strong worker. The family wasn't rich, but at least we had enough food. There were no major worries. But 3 years had passed too quickly. The old homemade gun I once used for hunting had been forgotten in a corner. It was now covered in rust. And today, she suddenly learned that I had picked up hunting again. Her emotions became complicated. After thinking for a while, she quietly put on her shoes. She slowly climbed down from the Kong. Then she carefully opened the door, only leaving a small gap. Through that gap, she looked outside. She saw me bending over in the yard. I was using an axe to process the rabbit. The large gray rabbit lay quietly beside me. Two small sparrows were nearby. The metal cup was filled with fresh fish and river shrimp. Everything was real, not a dream. Yakin quietly closed the door. Her thoughts became tangled. Had I really changed? The sorghum rice I carried away yesterday had returned. There was less than before, but it proved one thing that I hadn't exchanged it for: gambling money, the sparrow eggs, the wild fish, the meal I personally cooked. All of those things were right in front of her. Yet somehow, they felt unreal. Thinking about everything I had done these past 2 days, her doubts only grew stronger. For 3 years, I hadn't hunted. I hadn't entered the mountains. Why family had barely seen meat for an entire year. So why? Why did I suddenly become like a completely different person? It almost felt like something had possessed me. That strange thought appeared in her mind. Maybe she should visit Chonglin village. Maybe she should ask my parents' village for help. There was an old woman there named Lu Sangu. People said she was a respected spirit medium. Perhaps she could find out what had happened to me, because this change was simply too sudden. How could someone completely change overnight? Just as Yakin was lost in thought, I pushed open the door. I smiled. I'm going to take these 2 thicker back legs to your parents. And these front legs and the rabbit head. You'll have to help me bring them to Uncle Wang. If it wasn't for the bow I borrowed from him, I wouldn't have caught this rabbit. I'm leaving now. I'll come back as soon as possible. Before dark, I'll bring Nuno home. Tonight, we'll eat rabbit meat. After saying that, I turned around and left. Yakin immediately climbed back onto the Kong. She leaned against the window and looked outside. She watched me walk toward her parents' village. Only after I disappeared from sight did she relax. Then she noticed someone else approaching. It was Hu Xiujuan. She walked over casually. Yakin, are you home? Are you still angry with me? Hu Xiujuan walked into the yard carrying 2 heavy potatoes. But before Yakin could hide anything, it was too late. When Hu Xiujuan opened the kitchen door, her eyes immediately widened. Inside the metal basin was a whole fat rabbit. Oh my goodness! Where did you get such a big mountain rabbit? She put the potatoes down. Then she squatted beside the basin. She didn't even care about the blood. She touched the rabbit with her hands. Then she noticed the complete rabbit hide placed nearby. Her eyes instantly lit up. Wow! This hide could make a pair of gloves. 2 pieces like this could even make a small vest. That would look really nice. Yakin, can you give me this rabbit skin? Hu Xiujuan asked naturally. She assumed Yakin was too embarrassed to refuse, especially after borrowing food before. How could she say no? If you like it, take it. Yakin nodded. Oh, Yakin, how can I thank you? Thank you. I won't stand on ceremony then. I'll leave the potatoes here. Hu Xiujuan was delighted. Rabbit hide was valuable. She could make something from it, or even sell it. She grabbed the hide, rolled it up, and tucked it into her arms. Then she looked at the rabbit meat. She swallowed that a rabbit stew would taste amazing. Her family's life was much better than Yakin's. They weren't starving, but eating meat was still rare. It had been over a month since she had tasted any. She had already taken the rabbit hide. If she asked for meat too, that would be shameless. Well, I'll head back. If you ever need potatoes, just come to my house. Don't treat me like an outsider. Hu Xiujuan smiled. Her attitude was completely different from yesterday. Yesterday, she had refused to lend even 2 potatoes. Today, she walked away happily carrying rabbit skin. Meanwhile, I had already left the village. After taking a small road and turning right, another 7 or 8 miles would bring me to Kulituan. It was called Kalichuan because it was 7 miles from the town. Most villages and communes nearby were within about 10 miles. The name was quite literal, although evening had arrived. It wasn't completely dark yet, and winter nights in northeast China had bright, round moons. Even without streetlights, the road was still visible. After walking a little over a mile, I began thinking about how I should talk to my father-in-law. How could I bring Nyonyo home? Because before this, I had done too many terrible things that I had even fought with my father-in-law. When I was drunk, I smashed his windows and doors. Whenever I lost all my gambling money, I either threatened Yakin, forcing her to ask her parents for money if she failed. I would become furious. Sometimes I even went directly to their house. There was one time I almost burned down their thatched house. Fortunately, the villagers came quickly and put out the fire, but my father-in-law was so angry that he stayed in bed for 3 days. He almost ended up in the hospital. In Kalichuan. I was known as the worst son and law. My in-laws had suffered humiliation because of me. They probably regretted marrying their daughter to me more than anything. Now I had been reborn, that I had changed, that I had made up my mind. But nobody knew that. Everyone only remembered the old Chun-Lu. Along the way, I kept thinking, how should I apologize? How should I admit my mistakes? How could I make them believe me? When I reached an old wooden bridge, I suddenly stopped. I wiped my nose. Then I looked behind me. No one. What was that sound just now? I scratched my head. I was sure I hadn't imagined it. I had heard something. The night was completely stilled, no wind. The cold was sharp. In this kind of environment, even the smallest sound carried far. Just as I was about to continue walking, I noticed something beside the road. A fallen bicycle, an old 28-inch bicycle. I quickly walked over. I lifted it slightly. Then I frowned. For some reason, it looked familiar. I tightened my grip on the arrow carrying the rabbit. I was eager to get home. But just as I was about to climb back up the slope, a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Something was hidden not far away on the right side of the hill. This wasn't ordinary intuition. It was another signal from the strange ability I had gained after being reborn. I didn't know what it was, but my instincts told me it was something valuable. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to check. I tied the rabbit to the hemp rope around my waist. Then I carefully moved toward the right side of the slope. Every step was difficult. The frozen snow was slippery. Loose stones shifted under my feet. Several times, I almost lost my balance. Only by grabbing nearby trees and bushes did I avoid sliding down. I knew exactly how dangerous this place was. If I got injured here, especially if I broke a leg, the consequences would be unimaginable. There was a very real chance I would freeze to death before anyone found me. But after a dangerous climb, I finally reached the bare hillside. Sweat soaked through my clothes. My breathing became heavy. White vapor poured from my mouth, but I ignored it. My eyes quickly scanned the ground. Then I found the place. A small patch covered with black dead leaves. It received the most sunlight. The snow around it had melted. The soil was damp, and warm air was slowly rising from below. It looked completely different from the frozen surroundings. I immediately started digging. Little by little, the dirt was pushed away. Something unusual slowly appeared. When the final layer of soil was removed, my eyes widened. A ginseng root. It wasn't very large, but when I gently brushed the surface with my fingers, I could feel the years hidden within its texture. I carefully examined every detail: the long curved crown, the thick root structure, the fine roots spreading around the main body. Every sign confirmed it. This was an old wild ginseng. At least 20 or 30 years old. People in the village always said this mountain was a treasure land. There were rumors that hot springs flowed underground. Even during the coldest winter months, places touched by those warm waters would stay unfrozen. In this place, the soil was warm, the ground was wet. Maybe there really was a hidden spring beneath my feet. This is a good one. I couldn't hide my excitement. If I take this to the state-run store, I should be able to exchange it for several big Unity notes. My hands trembled slightly, not because of the cold, because I knew what this could mean. A chance to change my family's life. I could buy Yakin proper clothes. I could buy Nyonyo some Guangdong candy. That little girl deserved to enjoy something sweet. I carefully wrapped the ginseng and placed it inside my cloth bag. This unexpected discovery wasn't just money. It was hope. A chance to rebuild everything. The sky was already getting dark. I didn't waste any more time. Carrying my harvest, I hurried back home. When I passed my traps again, there were still no pheasants caught. That confused me. Could even those birds be hiding through winter? After spending most of the day running around the mountains, I finally returned to the village. The western sky was glowing red, like it had been set on fire. People called this the sunset of the northern frontier, that a special winter scene in northeast China that I kept the rabbit hidden inside my coat. The old cotton jacket covered everything. Whenever villagers greeted me, I avoided making large movements that I didn't want the rabbit tail to show. This was because of the hunting rules my father taught me. When hunters return with prey, if someone greeted them on the way home, they were expected to share some meat. It wasn't just generosity, that it was survival wisdom passed down by old hunters. Mountain hunting was dangerous. One day, a hunter might get injured deep in the forest that if he had no friends or reputation in the village, people might not help him. But if he normally treated others well, shared his harvest, maintained good relationships, those connections could save his life. That was how people survived in remote places. Of course, right now, I couldn't afford to share that. My wife and daughter were still struggling. They didn't even have enough food. When my family finally had enough, when we could eat meat whenever we wanted, then I would repay these relationships. The door wasn't locked. Just as I reached out to open it, I heard footsteps behind me. Crunch, crunch. Someone was walking over the frozen snow. I turned around and saw Song Yakin. She was wiping tears from her face with her sleeve. My heart tightened. Yakin? What happened? Why are you crying? I quickly walked toward her, but she only glanced at me. Then she pushed open the door and walked inside. I followed immediately. Inside, I placed the rabbit and 2 sparrows on the floor. Then I put the fish from my metal cup onto the stove. After that, I entered the room. Yakin sat on the Kong with her back facing me. She stared out the window, silent. She looked wrong. I looked around. Then I realized something. Nuno wasn't there. Yakin, where's Nuno? Didn't I say I would bring food back? Didn't I say I would take care of you too? She slowly turned around. Her eyes were red, but she didn't speak. I understood. She wanted to complain. She wanted to cry. But she was afraid. Afraid that saying too much would trigger the old Chen Lu. Afraid that another argument would start. Afraid that Nuno being gone would still become her fault. Please say something. Don't tell me. You sent Nuno back? My voice rose because I was anxious. But the moment my voice became louder, Yakin flinched. Her eyes widened. She thought I was angry again. What else could I do? Wait for you to come back and take your anger out on our daughter. Wait for another night of chaos. I sent her away early so you wouldn't get angry. Is that wrong too? What exactly do you want from me? Keeping her here isn't allowed. Sending her away isn't allowed. Tell me, what should I do? Her voice trembled. I stood there, completely speechless. I wanted to slam my head into the wall, and no matter what I said, and no matter what I did. She couldn't believe me anymore. I didn't mean that. I wasn't blaming you. Why can't you trust me once? But even I knew how weak those words sounded. After everything I had done, why should she trust me? Yakin looked at me through tears. Can I still trust you? Do I still dare? Chen Lu, I'm begging you. Please stop torturing me. What else do you want from me? If you want, I'll kneel. And she really did. She knelt on the Kong. My entire body froze. The woman who once loved me, the woman who once believed in me, had been reduced to begging me for mercy. Inside her heart, she was crying out, Heaven, please return the man who loved me. Return the husband who cared about me. What happened to him? Why did he become this way? I walked toward the old couple's house with my heart pounding. The moment I saw my mother-in-law's expression, I knew exactly what she was thinking. She wasn't seeing the current me. She was seeing the Chen Lu from before, the man who had brought nothing but pain. Last month, when Nuno came back covered in injuries, when Yakin ran home crying while holding her daughter, Zhang Guizhi's heart had almost broken. The 3 women in the family hugged each other and cried. And that scene had pushed my father-in-law, Song Jigang, beyond his limit. He grabbed a kitchen knife and wanted to come find me. That time, he was truly ready to risk everything. Even if he had to trade his own life. He wanted to save his daughter from me. I was lucky back then that I wasn't home, that I had gone out drinking and causing trouble again. That was the only reason I escaped. But over these past few years, I had found countless ways to destroy that family. Whenever something went wrong, I would go to Yakin's parents' home and make a scene. Everyone in the village knew what kind of life their daughter was living. Yakin's 3 brothers had beaten me more than once. But I was a complete troublemaker. If they hit me lightly, I ignored it. If they hit me too hard, Yakin would still have to take care of me afterward. They were completely helpless. Because of me, my father-in-law, a proud man his entire life, could barely hold his head up in the village anymore. No decent family could endure what I had done. The entire Song family had been living under the shadow I created. Every time I appeared, chaos followed. When Zhang Guizhi saw me standing outside, her heart immediately sank. Even her voice trembled. Mom, I came here to bring Nuno home. And I also brought you 2 rabbit legs. I went hunting in the mountains today. My luck was pretty good. I caught a mountain hare. As I spoke, I lifted the 2 rabbit legs in front of her. The old woman stared at them. She used to have a healthy, round face. Back then, my father-in-law took good care of her. But these past few years, because of everything I had done to Yakin, she had become much thinner. Every day, she worried about her daughter. The Song family had 3 sons and 2 daughters, except for the youngest daughter who wasn't married yet. Everyone else had their own families. Everyone lived a decent life. Only Yak and her. Life had become unbearable, and neither of her parents understood it. How had the good son-in-law they once loved turned into this? You should take those things back. We don't need them. Nuno is already asleep. Why are you coming to pick her up so late? Zhang Guizhi shook her head repeatedly. There was no way she would hand her granddaughter to me. Not after everything that had happened. Gamblers like me. She believed we had no humanity left. The last time, I had almost sold Nuno that it was only because the old couple borrowed money from everywhere that they managed to bring their granddaughter back. What kind of person did something like that? Mom, at least let me come inside and see Nuno. After that, I'll leave. There are also a few things I want to say to you and Dad. My voice was firm. Zhang Guizhi sighed. She was already old. She truly couldn't handle another fight tonight. After hesitating for a while, she turned around carefully. But even while walking, she kept looking back at me as if afraid I might suddenly do something. Inside the house, a thin old man with slightly gray hair was sitting on the floor sorting corn. He looked serious and upright. That was my father-in-law, Song Jigang. When he heard the door open, he raised his head. Then he saw Zhang Guizhi walk. And stiffly, she looked like she had been forced back. What happened? What were you shouting about? Did some wild animal come into our yard? Song Jigang asked. What wild animal? It's that bastard Chunlo. I can't deal with him. You talk to him. Zhang Guizhi waved her hand. Then she sat down beside the Kong. And the moment she moved aside, my figure appeared. The second Song Jigang saw me. His face instantly turned dark. Without hesitation, he grabbed a corn cob and threw it at me. I reacted quickly. I tilted my head and avoided it. But the corn cob still hit the window frame behind me. Bang! You heartless bastard. You still dare come to my house. Get out. Get out right now. Otherwise, I'll cut you down today. Song Jigang exploded. His hands searched through the pile of corn kernels. Then he grabbed a screwdriver that he rushed toward me. Zhang Guizhi panicked. Old Song. Put that down. She grabbed her husband. Although Chen Lu was a terrible person, he was still her daughter's husband. If he got seriously injured, the one suffering in the end would still be Yakin. Then she turned toward me. If you have something to say it quickly. Then leave. Her voice trembled. She even wiped away tears. Looking at my father-in-law and mother-in-law, seeing them treat me like an enemy, I finally understood. The damage I had caused wasn't just to Yakin. I had destroyed 2 elderly parents who once treated me like their own son. It was my fault that I deserved this. When I had first married Yakin, these 2 people truly treated me like family. They were good to me in every possible way. Whenever they had something good to eat, I was always the first person they invited to my place in their home was obvious. Every time I visited, my mother-in-law prepared a whole table of food. There was rarely meat, but there were plenty of wild vegetables and dried dishes. It was still a feast for their family. She would even open a can of yellow peach preserves and place it in front of me. My father-in-law would bring out the good liquor that his apprentices had given him months earlier. Liquor he had been unwilling to drink. He would warm it up, then put it in front of me. They had even taken their own pig and used it as a gift to help me find a job. But I had wasted everything. I had betrayed their kindness. I took a deep breath. Then I bent my knees and knelt on the ground. Both of them froze. They stared at me. What was I trying to do this time, Dad? Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong before. I hurt you. I hurt Yakin. I wasn't acting like a human being. But I've finally understood. I want to live a good life with Yakin. I want to take care of her and Nuno. Please, give me one more chance. The last chance. I know you won't believe anything I say right now. That's fine. You don't have to believe me. Just watch. I'll use my actions to prove it. I'll make up for everything I did. For the rest of my life. I'm willing to work like a cow and a horse for them. After saying that, I lowered my head and knocked it against the floor that a loud sound echoed through the room. That my apology was sincere, my attitude was serious. But the old couple only sighed, because this wasn't the first time. They had seen me kneel. They had seen me cry. They had heard my promises. Before, when I beat Yakin until she couldn't get out of bed, when I came to their house drunk and caused trouble. After I sobered up, I would also cry, I would apologize, I would swear I had changed. But every single time, after a few peaceful days, the old Chun Lu would return, again and again and again. The two elders had already lost hope. Even my own father had cut ties with me because of this. After everything, who would still dare believe in me? I looked at my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They were angry. They were disappointed. But more than anything, they were tired of hearing my promises. Tired of seeing me kneel down and apologize, because they had seen this scene too many times before. Stop with this act. Get up. Don't make a scene in our house. Nuno is already asleep, and it's late. You should go back. After hesitating for a moment, Song Jigang's anger slowly faded. He still hadn't forgiven me, not even close. But he also didn't want to keep fighting. Zhang Guoji waved her hand impatiently. Chun Lu, get up. It's pitch dark outside. Yakin is alone at home. Your father and I are worried. If you really want to change, then prove it. Don't just say empty words. I let out a deep breath. Then I slowly stood up. I took the two thick rabbit legs I'd carried with me and placed them on the Kong. Dad, Mom, this is the mountain hare I caught today. I brought 2 legs for you. The rest I'll leave for Yakin to restore her health. When I catch a pheasant next time, I'll bring some over again. I'm leaving now. I didn't get to bring Nuno home. That pain hit me hard, but I knew this was my own fault. I had to bear the consequences. After putting down the rabbit legs, I turned around and walked outside. Song Jigang stared at the rabbit legs on the Kong. For a long time, he didn't say anything. Then he turned away and continued sorting corn. Go call him back. He already came all this way. It doesn't hurt to let him eat a meal. Warm up the food and let him leave after eating. Zhang Guoji frowned. Why should we feed him? Are we giving him strength so he can go home and bully our daughter again? Song Jigang looked at her. Then what? If he goes back hungry, who suffers? Our daughter. Those words made Zhang Guoji stop, because she knew he was right. Back then, Chun Lu only cared about filling his own stomach. His wife and daughter could go hungry. That was the kind of thing he had done. Zhang Guoji hurried outside. The moment she opened the door, she saw me that I was standing beside the side room window, smiling like an idiot, because inside that room, my daughter Nuno was sleeping on the warm Kong. Her little face was red from the heat. She looked peaceful. She looked adorable. My heart twisted. How could I have hurt such a child? How could I have treated my own daughter that way? She was my daughter, my own flesh and blood, that I wanted to break the window and climb inside, that I wanted to sit beside her, that I wanted to touch her little face. But I didn't dare. Why are you staring there? The child is asleep. Don't disturb her. Come inside and eat before leaving. Zhang Guoji called out. Then she turned around and went back inside to add firewood. Only then did I slowly walk in. When I saw Song Jigang glaring at me, I immediately sat at the edge of the Kong and lowered my head. Like a child who had done something wrong. A few minutes later, Zhang Guoji brought out a steaming bowl of pickled cabbage soup. 2 coarse grain steamed buns sat beside it. Eat. After eating, leave. She said nothing else. Then she took the 2 rabbit legs into the kitchen and hung them on the wall. I nodded. Then I picked up the bowl and started eating. The Northeast-style pickled cabbage soup paired with coarse grain buns. It was simple, but it was incredibly satisfying. I ate until I couldn't help but burp. Song Jigang silently handed me a large tin cup. I smiled awkwardly, then took it and drank. When I finished, 2 large steamed buns were gone. The entire bowl of soup was empty. I stood up. Dad, Mom, I'll go back now. Yakin is probably waiting. Song Jigang didn't even raise his head. He only grunted. I quickly left. After I was gone, Zhang Guoji entered the room. Old man, do you think he really changed this time? He's even gone back to hunting. And he actually remembered to bring us rabbit legs. Song Jigang continued rubbing corn. What does that prove? His father used to hunt too. When Yakin first married him, wasn't he hardworking? Didn't he go into the mountains every day? At the beginning, everything looked good. Look at him now. He ruined his own life. Song Jigang glanced toward the kitchen. 2 rabbit legs don't mean anything. Who knows what scheme he has? Remember last time? He brought us pork belly, then tricked us into giving him 20 yuan. While we weren't home, he even stole your grain to sell. I don't believe him anymore. Zhang Guizhi thought about it, and she realized he had a point. Those rabbit legs were almost like a trap. They couldn't accept them too easily. Should I send them back tomorrow? No, wait and watch. Leave them hanging there. When he comes asking, give them back. We can't be fooled again. Our family only has so much food. We have to be careful. Meanwhile, at home, Yakin had already been waiting for a long time. She kept looking out the window, still no sign of me. Her worry grew stronger. Finally, she put on her old cotton coat and wrapped her headscarf. She was preparing to go to her parents' house. The thing she feared most was that I had gone there to cause trouble. If I angered her father badly, what would happen? Her older brothers weren't home, that if they were there, I wouldn't dare act recklessly. But her father, he was too old to fight me anymore. Just as Yakin pushed open the door, she saw me walking back, head lowered. Where did you go? Why are you only coming back now? She asked. I went to bring Nuno home. But your parents wouldn't let me. She was already asleep. I entered the room, removed my dogskin hat, and hung it on the wall. Yakin followed behind me. But the moment she stepped inside, her body became tense. She stood near the doorway, ready to run, because she could tell that I had probably been rejected by her parents. Maybe I was angry. Maybe I would take that anger out on her. That had happened too many times before. Wife, why are you standing there? It's freezing. The Kong isn't warm anymore. I'll go add some firewood. I took off my patched cotton coat, then threw it onto the Kong. After spending the entire day hunting, the coat was already soaked. The cold wind had frozen it stiff. Then I suddenly noticed something. The meat hanging on the wall. Wait, you didn't eat tonight? Yakin lowered her head. I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry. The moment she said that, her stomach betrayed her. That a loud growl echoed in the room. That I heard it immediately. Why didn't you eat? Why were you waiting for me? I already ate at your parents' house. Get on the Kong. Sit near the warm end. I'll cook the rabbit meat for you. I turned and walked toward the kitchen. Yakin stepped aside. She watched me, confused, completely confused, because I really entered the kitchen. Then something even stranger happened. The water jar was empty. Without saying anything, I picked up the shoulder pole and 2 wooden buckets. That I went outside without even putting on my coat. That a while later, I returned carrying water. That I filled the jar, then started a fire, washed the pot, prepared the meat. Everything looked natural, like I had been doing it for years. I boiled hot water, blanched the rabbit meat, removed the blood and impurities. Yakin watched silently. After a while, she closed the door, took off her shoes, and sat at the end of the Kong. What happened to him? Did he really get possessed? He's cooking again. He never cooked before. She rubbed her face. This couldn't be real. That it had to be a dream. Maybe she had wanted him to change for too long, so badly, that she had started imagining it. The man in front of her. It really felt like he had become someone completely different. Chun Lu had never cooked before, not once, and going into the mountains to hunt. That was even more impossible. That it was exhausting. That it was dangerous. He hadn't stepped into those mountains for 3 or 4 years. So what happened to him these past 2 days? While Song Yakin sat on the Kong, lost in her thoughts, the kitchen outside was filled with the sounds of cooking. Chun Lu was busy preparing dinner. And for him, cooking for his wife was something incredibly happy, something he had never appreciated before. He even hummed a little tune while working. After chopping the rabbit meat into pieces, he heated oil in the pot. Then he went outside, dug through the frozen soil in the yard, and pulled out 2 frozen green onions. After brushing off the dirt, he chopped them into pieces. Then he tossed a handful into the hot pot. Crackle! The aroma of animal fat and green onions instantly filled the kitchen. Even though Chun Lu had just eaten a full meal earlier, the smell still made him breathe in deeply. His face showed pure enjoyment. Once the onion fragrance was released, he added all the rabbit meat into the pot. Then he threw in more firewood and increased the heat. Chun Lu moved quickly and skillfully. He added the pine sparrow eggs he had collected from the mountain earlier. The eggs cooked together with the rabbit meat. Absorbing the rich flavor, he poured in enough water to cover the ingredients. Then he took a piece of homemade preserved vegetable from the shelf. After slicing it into thin strips, he added it to the pot. The salty aroma immediately made the dish even richer. Tio removed the gamey smell and improved the taste. Chun Lu went outside again. From beneath the snow, he dug out several frozen green onions and pieces of ginger. After lightly crushing them with the back of his knife, he cut them into sections and dropped them into the boiling pot. Finally, he found a small packet of dried chili peppers and some Sichuan peppercorns. After adding them, the entire kitchen was filled with a deep, spicy aroma. He covered the pot, then adjusted the fire under the stove. Slow, steady, perfect for slowly simmering the meat on the Kong. Song Yakin could already smell it. She hadn't tasted meat in months. The moment the aroma reached her, her stomach immediately betrayed her. Growl. She quickly covered her stomach with her hand. She didn't want Chun Lu to hear. She felt embarrassed. After waiting for a while, she prepared the table. Soon, Chun Lu walked in carrying a small iron basin filled with steaming rabbit meat. He also brought out a pot of cooked sorghum rice. Then he placed the bowls and chopsticks in front of her. Wife, eat first. I'll make you some hot tea. Eat while it's warm. It won't taste as good once it gets cold. After saying that, Chun Lu turned around and went back to the kitchen that he washed the pot. Then boiled water. He filled a thermos cup with hot tea and placed it aside that he didn't enter the room, because he was afraid that seeing him would make Yakin nervous. She might not even be able to eat. A few minutes later, Chun Lu walked back inside, but Song Yakin was still sitting there. The food hadn't been touched. What's wrong? Is it not good? Or did I make it too salty? Chun Lu picked up his chopsticks and tasted a piece of rabbit meat. The meat was tender. The flavor was rich. Nothing wrong with it. It tastes good. He looked at her, confused. Then Song Yakin quietly said, "You eat first. I'll eat whatever is left." The moment Chun Lu heard those words, his entire body froze, because he suddenly remembered that in the past, whenever there was something good to eat, he always ate first. He ate until he was satisfied. Only then would his wife and daughter get whatever remained. Thinking about it, Chun Lu raised his hand and slapped himself across the face. The sound was loud. Song Yakin was startled. Wife, I know saying sorry doesn't mean anything anymore. It was all my fault. Please, eat. I promise I'll never do that again. I won't gamble anymore. I'll live a proper life. And I'll bring our daughter back. I know you don't believe me, but you can watch what I do from now on. You don't have to forgive me, but please allow me to make up for what I did." His eyes were full of sincerity and tears. For the first time, something deep inside Song Yakin moved. The wall around her heart cracked slightly. Slowly, she reached out, took the chopsticks from Chun Lu, then picked up a large piece of rabbit meat. She placed it into her bowl and began eating quietly. But when the rich meat flavor filled her mouth, when her body finally felt that long-lost satisfaction, she couldn't hold it anymore. She covered her face with her hand and started crying. Chun Lu, panicked, he immediately climbed onto the Kong. He rubbed his hands together nervously, but he didn't dare touch her. Yakin, did I do something wrong again? If I said something wrong, tell me. I'll change. If you're angry, hit me. Curse me. Just don't hurt yourself. He desperately tried to comfort her. And seeing him like this, Song Yakin felt like she had returned to the beginning of their marriage. Back when Chun Lu truly cared about her. Back when he treated her like the most important person in the world. But later, everything changed. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Her little nose had turned red from crying. Tears kept falling. The suffering she carried had been buried inside her for 3 or 4 years. She once believed she would never receive her husband's care again, as long as he didn't hit her. That was already enough. When Chun Lu suddenly changed, she didn't dare hope. Because what if tomorrow, or the day after, he became the same person again? The higher the hope, the more painful the fall. Then eat more. Today we have rabbit meat. Tomorrow I'll go into the mountains again. I'll bring back a big pheasant. Then I'll find some dried mushrooms. We'll make pheasant stew with mushrooms. Chun Lu proudly patted his chest. Song Yakin only nodded. She didn't say anything. She just continued eating slowly. Watching her finally eat, Chun Lu felt an indescribable happiness. This was what being a husband should feel like. Not money, not status, but taking care of the people who depended on him. The large basin of rabbit meat, Song Yakin ate about 1/3. Then she stopped. Anyone could see she wanted more. But she looked carefully at Chunlu. Why are you looking at me? Eat it all. It won't taste good tomorrow. Chunlu smiled. I'm done. I ate enough. Tomorrow I'm going into the mountains again. There are also a few sparrows outside. I'm saving those for Nyunyo. I'll roast them when she comes home. Don't worry about me. I already ate at your parents' house. My mother cooked for you. Song Yakin asked softly. Yeah, pickled cabbage soup. And plenty of food. So eat. I'm really full. I couldn't eat another bite. Chunlu smiled. Only then did Song Yakin pick up her chopsticks. Again, she added 2 more pieces of rabbit meat to her bowl. But while eating, she kept secretly watching Chunlu, afraid that in the next second, he would suddenly change, throw the bowl away, flip the table, start yelling. Because scenes like that had happened countless times over the past few years that it felt like they could happen again at any moment. While eating, her eyes slowly turned red. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. Chunlu immediately noticed. Yakin, what's wrong? Does it not taste good? I'll heat it up again if you don't like it. But Song Yakin said nothing. She only shook her head again and again. Chunlu scratched his head. He didn't know what else to do as long as his wife was willing to eat. That was enough. He stood up, picked up his hat, and put it on. I'll go get a few more buckets of water. I'll fill the water jar so you don't have to keep making trips. The most important thing for you now is to stay home and take care of yourself. When you were recovering after giving birth years ago, you never got to eat anything good. I'm worried you might have been left with health problems. From now on, just watch what I do. I'll make sure you and our daughter become healthy and well-fed. Nice and plump. There's hot water in the kitchen too. Later I'll bring you a wooden bucket so you can take a bath inside. After saying that, Chunlu walked outside to fetch water. Song Yakin sat there eating meat. But her mind was completely blank. Everything felt unreal, like she was trapped in a dream. A beautiful dream she didn't dare believe. By the time Chunlu returned with another load of water, Song Yakin had already started cleaning the bowls. Chunlu hurried over. I already carried the water. Leave these things to me. You go wash yourself. I got a big bar of soap from Uncle Zhang. I gave him fish yesterday, and he still hasn't charged me for it. Go take a bath. Chunlu placed the soap into her hand. He also handed her a new towel. The towel had a big printed character on it that said prize. It carried a strong feeling of that era. Then Chunlu started cleaning the dishes. Song Yakin stood there frozen for a moment, watching him move around, watching him work, watching him carry another bucket of hot water into the room. Only then did she slowly pull down the cloth curtain. She quietly removed her clothes, then used the ladle to pour warm water over herself. When she rubbed the soap across her body, a faint fragrance spread through the air for the first time in a long while. A small smile appeared on her face. The wrinkles between her eyebrows slowly relaxed. Warm steam drifted outside through the curtain. After finishing in the kitchen, Chunlu opened the door. Immediately, he heard a loud splash. Song Yakin was startled. She quickly covered her chest. The ladle fell to the ground. I am taking a bath. I'll finish soon. Don't come closer. Her voice was full of nervousness. She was afraid that Chunlu would see her like this and return to his old behavior, that he would force her into something she hated. But Chunlu immediately understood. Okay. I won't come over. I'm just getting my cotton coat. After you finish, I'll leave. I'm planning to go out tonight and try my luck. After saying that, Chunlu climbed onto the Kong and grabbed his coat that had already been dried. The warmth felt comfortable against his body. Then he stood outside and waited. After some time, Song Yakin came out. Her hair was wrapped in a towel. A faint fragrance surrounded her. She was wearing her cotton coat. From behind, her slim figure looked graceful. Chunlu couldn't help but stare. This was his wife. The woman he had almost destroyed. Beautiful, kind, patient. A woman like this he should have cherished her, not hurt her. He stood there smiling foolishly. Do you want to wash too? I didn't use this water. Song Yakin glanced at him quietly, then asked, Are you going out again tonight? Chunlu shook his head. I won't wash now. I'll wash tomorrow morning when I come back. Then I'll sleep properly. It's too cold outside tonight. I'll go into the mountains and see if I can find something. Maybe I can bring back another pheasant. Then he suddenly remembered something. Oh right, wife. I forgot to tell you. As he spoke, he walked toward her. His hand reached into his pocket. Song Yakin immediately hugged herself. Her face became nervous. She stepped backward. Don't be afraid. Without your permission, I won't do anything like that again. I want to show you something. Chun Lu continued forward. Song Yakin kept retreating until her back touched the earthen wall. Only then did Chun Lu stop. He took out a cloth package from his pocket. He slowly opened it. Inside was a ginseng root still covered with soil. Song Yakin was a local village woman, but she had studied through high school. She was educated and quiet. The moment she saw the ginseng, her eyes widened. She immediately recognized it. This was at least a 20 or 30-year-old wild mountain ginseng, and the dirt was still fresh. Did you dig this from Banlatsi Mountain? Her face was full of surprise. She had just taken a bath. Her cheeks were still flushed. Her skin looked delicate. Chun Lu almost couldn't stop himself from smiling. Yes. I found it on a small slope in the mountain. I was lucky. If we sell this at the state-run store, it should bring a good price. Your sister-in-law works at the state-run store, right? If you have time, take it there and sell it. Keep some money for the household. The rest, give it to my parents. As for the debts I owe outside, don't worry about them. I'll find a way to repay them. Chun Lu looked at her seriously. From now on, you'll manage our household. I'll handle things outside. You handle things inside. If I find anything valuable and sell it, I'll give all the money to you. The financial decisions of this family will belong to you. After saying that, he placed the ginseng directly into her hands, and his heart was filled with happiness. Then he put on his coat, opened the door. Before leaving, he turned back. Wife, I probably won't come back tonight. Lock the door tightly. Then he closed the door. The sound of his footsteps slowly faded. Crunch, crunch, across the snowy yard. Song Yakin held the ginseng against her chest. Her mind was completely empty. She kept thinking about what Chun Lu had just said. Without realizing it, she touched her own face. Was this really not a dream? If it was the most beautiful dream she had ever had. Could it be that he had truly awakened? Meanwhile, Chun Lu left home. He headed straight toward the second street of the village. Taiping village had more than 100 households. Every group of connected houses was called one street. There were 4 streets in total. Sun Yud's house was the 6th house on the 2nd street. Sun Yud was the village accountant. People called him Old Sun Blind. His family's conditions were among the best in the village. Their walls were made of packed earth, while most families still used wooden structures. His house already looked impressive. When Chun Lu arrived, he saw lights glowing from inside. At least 2 kerosene lamps were burning. Most families wouldn't waste that much fuel. Old Sun, are you home? Chun Lu shouted. No response came. Just as he was about to call again, the outer door opened and a man wearing glasses appeared. He had a cotton coat draped over his shoulders and a key ring in his hand. Who is it? Chun Lu smiled. It's me, Chun Lu, old accountant. I want to talk to you about something. When Sun Yud saw who it was, his expression immediately changed. He turned around and walked back inside. He didn't even answer that a gambling addict showing up at night. What good could come from that? Either borrowing money, borrowing grain, or asking for some kind of favor. And tonight had already been a disaster. He had gone drinking at a banquet. Then he had almost been caught doing something he shouldn't. He had barely returned home and convinced his wife everything was fine. And now Chun Lu appeared. Seeing Sun Yud trying to close the door and ignore him, Chun Lu immediately walked into the yard. He couldn't let him shut the door, because today, he came here for one thing, a gun. Without a proper weapon, how could he hunt? How could he bring home enough food? Seeing that the door was still open, Chun Li's eyes turned. He suddenly had an idea and he raised his voice. Accountant's son, I heard you went to a banquet today. When did you get back? By the way, I saw your bicycle lying beside the road. Did you fall into the ditch? Was the bicycle damaged? The moment Sun Yud heard those words, his entire body froze. His foot slipped. He fell forward directly onto the ground. Then he scrambled up, grabbing the wooden door. His eyes widened. He stared at Chun Lu like he had just seen a ghost. Chun Lu couldn't help but smile. He had finally gotten his hands on a proper weapon. With a gun, things would become much easier. That night, the village was quiet. Chun Lu stopped near the eastern edge of Taiping village. He took out a flashlight. The beam cut through. The darkness. After making sure nobody was around, he crouched down and opened the wooden box. Inside, a single-barrel break-action shotgun quietly rested. The old-fashioned firearm looked simple and rough, but to Chen Lu, it was exactly what he needed. He gently touched the cold metal that a wave of excitement surged through him. In this era, a hunting gun was not just a weapon. It represented the ability to survive, the ability to bring food home, the ability to protect his family. After checking everything carefully, Chen Lu wrapped the gun inside a cloth bag and carried it on his back. Then he headed toward Banlatsi Mountain. Tonight, he was going to bring back a big haul. The snow beneath his feet made soft cracking sounds. Every step kicked up tiny snowflakes that reflected the moonlight. The mountain at night was silent. Cold wind passed through the trees. But Chen Li's heart was burning. First, he checked the traps he had set earlier. Unfortunately, no pheasants had been caught. Chen Lu felt a little disappointed, but he quickly adjusted his mood. That was normal. Hunting had never been easy. That if every trip brought back prey, everyone would be a hunter. After that, Chen Lu arrived beside the frozen river. The ice surface looked like a giant mirror under the moonlight. He picked up the wooden-handled pickaxe he had prepared earlier. Then, he started breaking through the ice. Crack, crack, crack. The sound echoed through the quiet mountain. Half an hour later, a large hole had finally been opened. The cold air from the river rushed upward. At one point, Chen Lu almost slipped into the hole himself. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. He grabbed the edge of the ice and pulled himself back. His hands were already red from the cold, but his eyes remained full of determination. After catching his breath, Chen Lu took out the fishing baskets he had prepared. These were traditional Northeast fishing tools. Locally, people used them to catch fish beneath the ice. He had brought several one after another. He lowered them into the water. Then he tied the ropes firmly to nearby bushes. Once everything was set, all he had to do was wait. Chen Lu clapped his hands. Then he opened the cloth bag on his back. He carefully took out the break-action shotgun. Using the dim flashlight, he began preparing the ammunition, gunpowder, pellets. Everything was loaded carefully. After finishing, he held the gun and walked into the forest with his memories from his previous life and the hunting knowledge he had learned from his father. Chen Lu quickly began searching. The mountains were familiar, the terrain was familiar, and most importantly, he had something no hunter in this era possessed, the ability to see what would happen next. Soon, a scene appeared in his mind. A group of pheasants moving through the snow. Their hiding place, their direction, everything became clear. Chen Li's mouth curved upward. This time, he wasn't going home empty-handed. Chen Lu moved quietly through the forest. Every step was careful. Every breath was controlled. The shotgun had a limited range, so he couldn't simply fire from a distance. He had to get close enough to guarantee a hit. Using his experience from his previous life, he quickly made a plan. Instead of chasing the pheasant directly, he moved around and blocked its escape route. Slowly, step by step, he forced the bird toward the direction he had prepared earlier, until finally, the pheasant rushed straight into the trap. Seeing the struggling bird, Chen Lu couldn't help but smile. That he quickly grabbed it, stuffed it into a fertilizer bag, tied the opening tightly, and continued deeper into the mountain. More than an hour passed. Two gunshots broke the silence of the snowy forest. Bang! Bang! The echoes traveled through the mountains for a long time. By the time Chen Lu stopped, he had successfully brought down another pheasant and a mountain rabbit. Looking at the harvest in his hands, his heart was filled with satisfaction. One night of hard work. 2 pheasants. One rabbit. For ordinary people in this era, this was already an incredible harvest. On the way home, Chen Lu was smiling the whole time. That he was already imagining the scene when he returned. His wife, Song Yakin, would look at the prey he brought back. Maybe she would finally smile. Maybe she would slowly start believing in him again. Maybe the two of them could return to the way they were when they first married. And if things went well, perhaps they could even have another child. A warm family. A peaceful life. That was the future Chen Lu wanted more than anything. But when he arrived near the place where he had set his traps, his footsteps suddenly stopped. A huge dark shadow appeared ahead. Chen Lu froze. His entire body instantly became alert. His hand tightened around the shotgun. Something was wrong, very wrong. That he slowly lowered himself into the snow. Afraid to make even the slightest sound, the cold wind passed through the forest. The moonlight slowly revealed the shape of the shadow to wild boar, a huge one, even though it was not the largest kind Chen Lu had ever seen. Its thick body and terrifying appearance were enough to make anyone's heart tremble. Two curved tusks extended from its mouth. Its small eyes reflected a dangerous light. This was a beast built for fighting. Chen Lu quickly realized what had happened. The wild boar had accidentally stepped into the traps he prepared for pheasants. But those traps were never meant to restrain an animal like this. The boar twisted violently. The ropes were already close to breaking. Soon, it would escape. Chen Lu understood immediately that a normal trap might hold a pheasant, but against a wild boar, it was only a temporary inconvenience. That a battle started inside Chun Li's mind. Should he shoot, or should he leave? The shotgun in his hand was powerful enough, but only at close range. Getting closer meant facing those terrifying tusks. One mistake, and he could end up with a hole through his body. In the wilderness during winter, even a serious injury meant death. But if he succeeded, this would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That a wild boar could provide an unbelievable amount of meat. His wife and daughter could eat well for many days. The boar suddenly gave a violent shake. Snap. The rope broke. It had freed itself. With its enormous strength, it destroyed the nearby traps completely. Then it lowered its head and began digging through the snow. After a moment, it turned and walked directly toward Chen Lu. Chen Lu almost cursed. What terrible luck! But at the same time, his heart started beating faster. Opportunity. A chance like this might never come again. Even if he failed, he would regret not trying. Chen Lu slowly removed the bag containing the pheasants and rabbit. He placed it aside. Then he lowered himself into the snow. One step. Another step. He crawled forward. The snow melted inside his sleeves, then froze again in the cold wind. His skin felt like it was being cut by knives. But Chun Lu ignored everything. His eyes were fixed only on the wild boar. Finally, 20 meters. That was the distance between them. No trees, no rocks. Nothing separating them. One man, one beast. The wild boar noticed him. It stopped. White steam poured from its nose. One hoof scratched against the ground. It was angry. It had already sensed danger, but Chen Lu remained completely still. This distance. Even if he fired now, the shotgun might not do enough damage. The thick hide of the wild boar could easily stop the pellets. He needed closer. He needed one perfect chance. The snowy mountain was silent. The moon hung above the wilderness. Cold air surrounded everything. Anyone else would have already turned and escaped. But Chen Lu was different. He had died once. He had lost everything once. Now, he had too much to protect. His wife, his daughter, his family. He couldn't give up. The wild boar suddenly raised its head. A terrifying roar exploded through the forest. Then, it charged, like a small train rushing downhill. The snow exploded beneath its feet. Its tusks reflected the moonlight. Death was rushing toward Chun Lu. Chun Li's heart almost jumped out of his chest. But he didn't panic. He waited, closer, closer, until the smell of the wild boar reached him. The moment before impact, Chen Lu turned, pulled the trigger, bang. A flash illuminated the darkness. The pellets struck the wild boar's head. Blood splashed. One ear was torn open. The animal let out a horrifying scream. But it didn't stop. Instead, it became even more violent. It continued charging. 10 meters. That was all that remained. Chen Lu turned and at the same time. He reached into his pocket. Gunpowder, pellets, reload. His hands moved as quickly as possible. His legs felt heavy. His lungs burned. Behind him, the wild boar's footsteps grew louder. Closer, closer. The moment the wild boar was about to crash into him, Chen Lu reacted on instinct. Using the terrain around him, he suddenly threw himself to the side. At the same time, he turned around and pulled the trigger again. Bang! The flash lit up the darkness. This time, the pellets struck the wild boar's shoulder. The beast let out a painful roar. Its charge slowed for just a moment. That was all Chen Lu needed. He turned and ran. His eyes scanned the surroundings desperately. A large tree appeared ahead. The trunk was thick. Maybe it could buy him a few seconds. Chen Lu pushed himself to the limit and rushed toward it. Behind him, the wild boar's angry roar grew. Louder, closer, closer. Just as he reached the tree, the wild boar suddenly accelerated. It was about to catch him. At the last possible moment, Chun-Lu twisted his body and slipped behind the tree. The wild boar couldn't stop. Boom! Its massive body slammed directly into the trunk. Snow instantly collapsed from the branches above. That a large amount of snow fell like a white waterfall. Some landed on Chun-Lu. The rest covered the wild boar. Chun-Lu almost lost his balance. That a heavy chunk of snow hit near his neck. His body tilted. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and used the shotgun in his hand to support himself. Otherwise, he would have fallen right there. The wild boar struggled after the collision. The impact had shaken it. For a brief moment, it couldn't turn around. Chun-Lu immediately took the opportunity that he moved around the tree and ran in another direction. But the wild boar quickly recovered and continued chasing. Chun-Lu knew this couldn't continue. Running forever was impossible. Eventually, he would run out of strength. He needed a chance to finish this. Suddenly, a place flashed through his mind. That steep slope. The same place where he had found the wild ginseng. The same slope where he had shot the mountain rabbit. If he could lure the wild boar there, maybe he could create an opportunity. Chun-Lu gritted his teeth that he made a dangerous decision. He deliberately slowed down. He wanted the wild boar to keep chasing him. The distance between them gradually closed. The slope was getting closer, closer. Finally, Chun-Lu suddenly sped up. That he rushed toward the edge, then jumped at the same time. The wild boar charged directly at him. Its huge body slammed forward. Chun-Lu could even feel its nose brush against his cotton shoes. But his body was already in the air. His hands reached out and grabbed the tree branch at the edge of the slope, the same tree he had used when hunting the rabbit. The wild boar had no time to react. It rushed straight down the steep slope. Because of its momentum, it lost control. Its massive body rolled several times through the snow. Boom, boom, boom. Finally, it stopped at the bottom. That a miserable scream echoed through the mountain. The wild boar had fallen into the small ravine below, but it was not dead. That it struggled violently. Blood stained the surrounding snow. It tried to climb out, but the slope was too steep. Every attempt ended with it sliding back down. Chun-Lu finally breathed out. He sat down in the snow. His heart was still beating violently. Sweat mixed with snow. His torn cotton coat was completely soaked. Some areas were already showing the cotton inside. The exposed parts were freezing painfully. After resting for a long time, Chun-Lu slowly stood up. He walked to the edge of the slope and shined his flashlight downward. The wild boar was still trapped. It had tried several times to escape, but each time it slipped and crashed back down. Eventually, it became exhausted. Chun-Lu looked at the distance. He hesitated. He could reload the shotgun. But from here, the distance was too great. He wouldn't be able to guarantee a hit. And going down there, that was even more dangerous. A wounded wild boar was still a wild boar. One mistake, and he could die. After thinking carefully, Chun-Lu made his decision. Not today. At least he wouldn't risk his own life. That he had finally gotten a second chance. That he still had a wife and daughter waiting for him. He couldn't die here. Chun-Lu picked up his shotgun. He carried it over his shoulder and limped back. First, he retrieved the bag containing the pheasants and rabbit. Then he returned to the frozen river. The fishing nets he had placed earlier were still there. One by one, he pulled them up. When all 7 or 8 nets were collected, a smile finally appeared on his face. The harvest was surprisingly good. More than 20 crucian carp, all alive and jumping. There were also plenty of river shrimp. Tonight's effort had not been wasted. Still, Chun-Lu felt a little regret. That wild boar, it would have been an incredible catch. But he shook his head. Forget it. I'll come back tomorrow when it's daylight. If something happens to me, my wife becomes a widow, he muttered to himself. Then he carried all his harvest and headed back toward the village. He didn't dare stay too long in the deep mountains. Who knew what else was hiding there? A tiger. A black bear. Any of those beasts could appear. With only this old shotgun, if he really encountered one, running might be his only option. Half an hour later, Chun-Lu finally reached his home. His entire body was wet and cold. The gate was locked. He didn't knock. Instead, he climbed over the wall. When he entered the yard, he found the door tightly secured. He didn't pull it. He didn't want to scare Song Yakin. But he couldn't stay outside either. The temperature was far below freezing. His clothes were wet. If he remained there, he would freeze to death. Chun-Lu crouched beneath the window and waited. 1 hour, 2 hours. His entire body trembled from the cold. His teeth were shaking, but he endured it. because he remembered everything he had done before. Compared to the pain he had caused his wife and daughter, this suffering was nothing. Suddenly, the light inside the house turned on. Chen Li's heart moved. Someone was awake, but his legs were already numb from the cold. Standing up took all his strength. Inside the room, Song Yakin had woken up to use the bathroom. She picked up the chamber pot, then accidentally looked toward the window that a dark figure was standing outside. Her entire body froze. She covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Who? Who is outside? Is that you, Lao San? Because Chun Lu was the third child in his family, Song Yakin had always called him Lao San. That was how she used to call him affectionately. But over the years, the love between them had slowly disappeared. The nickname remained, but the warmth was gone. Don't be afraid, it's me. Chun Li's voice trembled. The cold had made even his teeth hurt. His fur hat was covered in white frost. His pants had frozen stiff. Every movement caused pain. When Song Yakin heard his voice, she finally realized her husband had returned in the middle of the night. But instead of feeling relieved, her heart sank. Because she remembered the past, she thought he must have gone hunting again. Maybe he had sold the animals secretly. Maybe he had lost money gambling again. Maybe he had come home after losing everything, just like before, again and again. That was always how it happened. Song Yakin didn't want to open the door, but she didn't dare refuse either. With a complicated expression, she put on her coat, carried the chamber pot away, and walked toward the outer room. She unlocked the door and slowly pushed it open that a wave of freezing air rushed inside. Then she turned around and walked back into the room. She sat beside the warm brick bed. Her face was full of disappointment. She lowered her head, and tears slowly gathered in her eyes. Maybe she had just hoped for too much. When Chen Lu woke up again, the first thing he felt was warmth. His entire body felt relaxed. The cold pain that had covered him before was completely gone. He stretched out his hand lazily, then suddenly realized something was wrong. He was lying under the blanket. Beside him was a basin of clean water that a large bar of soap sat next to it. And his clothes, his frozen, dirty clothes from last night, had been washed clean and were hanging neatly on the drying rope. There was even a faint scent of soap still lingering on his body. Chun Lu touched his face, then his arms. That a strange feeling filled his heart. It seemed, while he was sleeping, Song Yakin had taken care of him. She had wiped his body, changed his clothes, and helped him recover from the cold. Thinking about that, Chun Lu couldn't help but smile. After everything he had done in the past, after hurting her so many times, she still cared about him. Maybe his wife's heart had not completely closed. Maybe he still had a chance to make things right. Just then, the door opened. Song Yakin walked in carrying 2 plates of steaming hot food. The moment the smell entered the room, Chun Li's stomach reacted immediately. That it was a familiar smell from his childhood, wild chicken, and dried hazelnut mushrooms. That a classic northeastern mountain dish. The aroma filled the entire room. Song Yakin placed the plates on the table. Wake up. Her voice was calm, not cold, not distant, just like an ordinary wife talking to her husband. For Chen Lu, those simple words felt incredibly precious. He sat up slowly and looked at the food on the table. Then he looked at Song Yakin. For a moment, he didn't know what to say, because he understood. The food in front of him was not just a meal. That it was a small sign. That a sign that the relationship between them was slowly beginning to heal. Song Yakin noticed him staring and lowered her head slightly. What are you looking at? Eat while it's hot. Chen Lu smiled. Okay. He put on his shoes and sat beside the table. The two of them quietly ate together. The room was warm. The fire in the stove crackled softly. Outside, the winter wind continued to howl. But inside this small farmhouse, there was finally a little bit of warmth. For the first time in many years, Chen Lu felt like he was truly home. While eating, Chen Lu suddenly remembered something: the wild boar. The injured wild boar was still trapped in the mountain ravine. That if he waited too long, something unexpected might happen. After breakfast, he had to go back and check. That wild boar was a huge opportunity if he could bring it home. Not only would his family have meat for a long time, he could also prove to everyone that he really had changed, that he was no longer the useless man everyone looked down on. But at this moment, looking at Song Yakin sitting across from him, seeing her quietly eating the chicken he brought back, Chun Lu suddenly felt that maybe the most important harvest from Last night was not the prey. It was the small amount of trust he had slowly regained. A family. A wife. A daughter. These were the things he had almost lost forever. And this time, he would never let them disappear again. I want to talk to you about something. After eating one chicken leg and a few pieces of rabbit meat, Song Yakin finally felt full. For someone who had gone so long without proper food, this meal already felt like a luxury. She slowly raised her head and looked at Chun-Lu. Her voice was cautious, almost hesitant, as if she was afraid that saying too much would make him think she was asking for too much. She paused for a moment, then quietly continued. Can we discuss something? Chun-Lu immediately put down his chopsticks. Seeing her careful expression, his heart tightened. For the past few years, his wife had lived too cautiously around him. Even making a simple request required courage. He had hurt her so deeply that she no longer dared to expect anything from him. Of course. Whatever it is, just tell me. Chun-Lu looked at her seriously. If it's something reasonable, I'll do my best. Song Yakin lowered her eyes and rubbed her fingers together. After hesitating for a while, she finally spoke. I was thinking about getting Xiao back. The moment she said that, Chun-Lu froze. Then his eyes immediately became serious. Of course. I'll go pick her up today. I promised you that I would bring our daughter home. Song Yakin looked at him. There was a complicated emotion in her eyes. It's not that simple. Your parents, she swallowed. Your parents probably won't believe you either. Chun-Lu was silent, because he knew she was right. The people who had been hurt the most by his past behavior were not strangers. They were the people closest to him. His wife, his daughter, his parents-in-law, and even his own parents. No amount of apologies could erase everything overnight. Only time and actions could. I know. Chun-Lu nodded. That's why I'm not asking them to believe me now. I'll prove it. Day by day. Song Yakin looked at him quietly. For the first time in many years, she saw determination in his eyes. Not drunken madness. Not empty promises. Not the fake regret after causing trouble. A real determination. Actually, I also wanted to ask. Song Yakin hesitated again. Chun-Lu smiled softly. Just say it. You don't have to be so careful with me anymore. Those words made Song Yakin's eyes become slightly red. Careful. That word hurt. Because it was true. She had been careful for too long. Careful not to anger him. Careful not to say the wrong thing. Careful not to make him lose his temper. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to simply be a wife, not someone living beside a storm. I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't tell your parents about the rabbit and the ginseng yet. Chun-Lu was surprised. Why? Song Yakin looked down. Because, I'm afraid they'll think you're trying to trick them again. She softly explained. Your parents and mine have both been hurt too many times. If you suddenly become better overnight, they won't believe it. They'll think you have another plan. Chun-Lu fell silent. Then he slowly nodded. She was right. Trust was something that had been broken over years. It couldn't be repaired in just a few days. I understand. I won't rush them. I'll just keep doing what I should do. Song Yakin looked at him. You really think that way? Chun-Lu smiled. Yakin. I lost the most important things in my life because I didn't know how to cherish them. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. His voice was calm, but every word was heavy. Song Yakin stared at him for a long time. Then she quietly picked up another piece of meat. Eat too. You went out all night. You must be hungry. Chun-Lu laughed. See? You're still worried about me. Song Yakin immediately turned away. Who worries about you? I just don't want you to collapse and make me take care of you. But the faint blush on her face betrayed her. Chun-Lu smiled. He knew. The road ahead was still long. The scars from the past were still there. But at least, the door that had been completely closed was finally opening a little. And this time, he would walk through it carefully. After breakfast, Chun-Lu looked toward the mountain outside. There was still one thing he needed to deal with. That injured wild boar. Last night, he had escaped with his life. But that beast was still trapped in the ravine. If he could bring it back, it would be enough meat to completely change his family's life. However, he also knew he couldn't act recklessly. The mountain was dangerous. One wrong move could cost him everything. But before anything else, he had to become the man his wife and daughter could rely on. What is there to discuss? Our family's decisions are yours to make. You just need to tell me. Chun-Lu continued eating as he spoke casually. But when Song Yakin heard those words, her eyes immediately lit up. She looked at him with disbelief. Are you serious? Chun-Lu nodded. Of course. Song Yakin hesitated for a moment. Then, there's still another plate of wild chicken in the pot. I was thinking about sending it to Xiaoyo later. She's staying at my parents' place right now. She probably hasn't eaten anything good either. She's been craving meat for a long time. Do you think it's okay? The moment she finished speaking, Chen Lu put down his bowl and chopsticks. Then he shook his head. Song Yakin's expression immediately changed. The warmth she had just felt disappeared. Ah, that's fine. I won't send it then. We can talk about it later. Her voice became quieter. She understood. She was eating meat here, while her daughter was still at her grandparents' house eating coarse grain buns, drinking plain vegetable soup. The child was clearly not getting enough nutrition. But before she could say anything else, Chen Lu quickly swallowed the food in his mouth. He had realized she misunderstood him. He forced the food down so quickly that he almost choked, then grabbed the water cup and drank several gulps before finally recovering. Foolish. Wife, that's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. One plate of chicken isn't enough. Chen Lu looked at her seriously. Didn't I bring back 2 wild chickens and a rabbit last night? And there's also a badger outside. I was just worried you wouldn't be able to carry everything, so I was thinking about finding someone to help send it over. And the fish and shrimp outside. Send all of those to your parents too. It's only food. I can go into the mountains again. As long as I keep working, we'll have everything we need. Chen Lu patted his chest confidently. Only then did Song Yakin realize she had misunderstood him, but what surprised her even more was how generous he was toward her family. She stared at him quietly. What exactly had happened to this man? Why did he suddenly seem like a completely different person? It was so strange that sometimes she wondered if she was dreaming. What are you doing? Song Yakin came back to her senses when she saw Chen Lu getting off the bed. Last night, I ran into a wild boar. I took a couple of shots at it. Actually hit it too. The thing fell into a ravine and got injured. It probably still hasn't climbed out. I'm going to find a few people and bring it back. Chen Lu smiled while putting on his cotton jacket. But the moment Song Yakin heard that he had encountered a wild boar, her heart tightened. Was it male or female? She immediately asked, male. Chen Lu answered casually. The moment he said that, Song Yakin's face instantly turned pale. That a chill ran through her body. That a male wild boar was far more dangerous than a female one. Female wild boars were already fierce, but males had those terrifying tusks. If they charged and hit someone, those tusks could tear straight through a person. One strike could create a fatal wound. That kind of animal was not something one person could easily deal with. Looking at Chen Lu standing safely in front of her, Song Yakin felt relieved. But at the same time, she couldn't help feeling angry. Why were you so reckless? It was dark. You were alone deep in the mountains. What if the boar hit you? In this weather, even a small injury could get you killed out there. Her voice carried blame. But underneath that blame was fear. Fear of losing him. Chen Lu immediately regretted telling her. He should have kept that part to himself. He didn't want her worrying. It's okay. I knew what I was doing. If I couldn't kill it, I could still escape. That animal can't climb trees. There are forests everywhere. I could get away. Chen Lu smiled. Don't worry. For you and Xiaoyo, I won't let anything happen to me. After saying that, he walked outside to in the outer room. He lifted the lid of the pot, seeing the chicken legs inside. He grabbed one and wrapped it carefully in a bag. Then he tucked it into his coat. Before leaving, he turned back. I'll be back soon. Then he pushed open the door and disappeared into the cold morning air. Song Yakin looked at the remaining rabbit meat and wild chicken. Everything still felt unreal. After a while, she finally started cleaning up, but before she could finish, the door opened again. That a familiar voice came from outside. Wow, what smells so good? I could smell it from next door. Yakin, are you cooking rabbit meat? It was Hu Xiujuan. She walked in without waiting for permission. Her eyes immediately started wandering around. Then she saw the 2 bowls of meat on the table. Both were filled to the top. Oh my, this isn't just rabbit meat. There's wild chicken too. She looked surprised, then suddenly smiled strangely. Yakin, did you find someone else outside? With your looks, if you just waved your hand, plenty of men would come running. Otherwise, where did all this mountain meat come from? Her words were sharp and insulting. Song Yakin's expression immediately darkened. What are you talking about? Have I offended you? How can you say things like that? If you want to stay, then stay. If not, leave. Although Song Yakin usually looked gentle and quiet, that didn't mean she could be bullied. For years, Chen-lu had treated her badly, yet she had endured everything. That alone showed how strong her personality was. But accusing her of having improper relationships, that was something no woman in the village could tolerate. It affected her reputation. That Hu Shoujuan was startled. She had never seen Song Yakin so angry before. Immediately, she forced a smile. "Oh, Yakin, I was just joking. Why are you taking it seriously? We're good friends. We married into the same village. How could we fight over something like this? I was just talking nonsense." Song Yakin stared at her. "Don't make jokes like that again." Then she picked up the bowls of meat and walked into the kitchen. She no longer wanted to continue the conversation. Hu Shoujuan stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then she recovered. She sat down on the edge of the Kong, pulled out some sunflower seeds, and started cracking them. After a while, she spoke again. "Yakin, since your family is doing so well now, you have so much mountain meat that you can't even finish it. What about the grain, potatoes, and pork you borrowed from my family before? Shouldn't you return them? Look at you. You're eating so well. Meanwhile, I'm struggling. My husband works at the forest farm. He only gets a fixed salary. We can't even eat meat every month." While speaking, Hu Shoujuan secretly watched Song Yakin's reaction. Song Yakin's hands stopped moving. After a moment, she calmly replied, "I understand. When Chen-lu comes back, I'll have him return everything. We won't owe you anything." Then she walked back into the kitchen. She didn't want to say another word. Hu Shoujuan smiled. "All right. Return it soon. Our family doesn't have much food left either. Unlike yours, now you're eating meat every day." As she walked out, her eyes kept drifting toward the bowls of meat. She couldn't hide the greed in her expression. Only after leaving the house did she finally look away. The door closed, and Song Yakin stood quietly in the kitchen. For the first time in many years, she felt like her family might really have a future on the other side. Chen-lu arrived at the home of an old friend at the west end of the village. But when he reached the entrance, he found the door locked. Nobody was home. This person was known in the village as a guardian of the village. According to old rural beliefs, every village had one or two people like this. People said they were born with special destinies. They carried away bad luck for the village. They were called Earth Immortals by some villagers. Of course, those were just old sayings. In reality, these people usually had intellectual disabilities. They were simple-minded, kind-hearted, and they had almost no desires for them. Having enough food to eat was already the greatest happiness. Ordinary people were similar when they were starving. Before their stomachs were full, they only had one thought: find food, survive. But once people had enough to eat, they started wanting more. Money, status, comfort, a better life. Yet people like him were different. Even after eating their fill, their biggest concern was still the same. Where would the next meal come from? And Chen Li's unfortunate brother was exactly such a person. The only guardian of Taiping village. A man born with a natural intellectual disability. He had no family to rely on. The only person beside him was his elderly mother, who had been bedridden for years. Nobody even remembered his real name anymore. Everyone in the village simply called him Demai Tai Shun, Big Dirty God. After hearing it for years, people eventually shortened it to Demai Tai. The name sounded harsh, but nobody truly hated him, because everyone knew what kind of person he was. His clothes were legendary in the village. He wore the same set of clothes all year. After years of wear, they had become shiny with grease and dirt. If he took them off and placed them on the ground, they could almost stand by themselves. But nobody blamed him. In those years, even ordinary families only had a few decent sets of clothes. For someone like Demai Tai, having something warm to wear was already enough. Thinking about this old friend, Chen-lu felt a deep ache in his heart. In his previous life, there were too many people he had wronged. This time, he would repay them one by one. He quickly walked toward the Zhou family's house. Today was a wedding day. The Zhou family was hosting a banquet, a traditional flowing feast where villagers could come and eat. Demai Tai was probably helping there. When Chen-lu arrived at the Zhou family courtyard, he immediately saw a scene full of celebration. The ground outside was covered with red scraps from firecrackers. Red lanterns hung at the entrance. A huge, double happiness character was pasted on the door. Although the weather was freezing cold, the winter sun was bright. Standing under the sunlight, people could still feel Warmth.in the old northeastern countryside. Weddings were never just a family event. They were a celebration for the entire village. The moment Chun-Lu stepped inside, he felt like he had traveled back decades. The courtyard was full of laughter. Children in new clothes ran around excitedly. They chased after candies thrown into the air. Every time someone caught one, they cheered loudly. For children in that era, sweets were a rare treasure. Women gathered together, their hands busy making dumplings. While chatting, look at that bride. She's really pretty. I heard she's from town. She's a city girl. Old Joe's son really has luck. He actually married someone from town. Their voices were filled with curiosity and envy. Nearby, more than 10 banquet tables had already been prepared. Bowls and chopsticks were arranged neatly. Cold dishes were placed on the tables. The cooks were busy beside several huge iron pots. Steam filled the air. When one pot lid was lifted, the smell immediately spread through the entire courtyard. Chicken, duck, fish, pork, and rich broth that had been simmering for hours. There was even a giant pot of traditional northeastern pork and sauerkraut. Stew. The bubbling soup released an irresistible aroma, especially in winter, with the hot steam mixing with the cold air. That smell could make anyone's stomach growl. Men carried supplies and helped with preparations. Everyone joked and chatted. The entire courtyard was filled with the simplest kind of rural happiness. Life was hard. Conditions were poor, but people's smiles were genuine. As Chun-Lu walked in, he immediately saw village accountant's son sitting at the entrance. He was laughing while recording gift money. Whenever someone held a wedding, there was always someone responsible for keeping track of gifts, cigarettes, alcohol, seeds, snacks, money. Everything was recorded. In that era, wedding gifts came in many forms. Some gave cash, usually not much. A few yuan. Sometimes even just a few coins. Those with better conditions or closer relationships gave more. Others brought eggs. Or mountain products. It was also during this period that money slowly became more and more important. Seeing Chun-Lu walk over, Sun immediately shouted, "Chun family's third son. Did you come to give a wedding gift? You have an account with the Zhou family, right?" His voice immediately attracted everyone's attention. The villagers turned around, but most of them only shook their heads. Everyone knew what kind of person Chun-Lu was. A gambler, the troublemaker, the man whose family had been ruined by his own hands. How could someone like him have money for a wedding gift? Everyone assumed he had come just to eat. Soon, several men nearby started laughing. That gambler? His wife will be sold off sooner or later. Stay away from him. Who would ruin their own life by getting involved with someone like that? The villagers whispered among themselves. Even their wives had warned them before. Nobody wanted their own husbands to become like Chun-Lu, a man who lost everything gambling, then went home and beat his wife and child. In the village, people were divided into different levels, and gamblers were among the most looked down upon. Little third brother. Son, the accountant smiled. Since you're here to eat, you should at least bring a gift. No gift means no seat later. His tone sounded like a joke, but there was a hidden bitterness behind it. Because this was the same son who had been forced to lend Chun-Lu his hunting gun earlier, he still had anger in his heart. Now that he had a chance, he wanted to embarrass him. A woman helping in the kitchen also sneered. Will the Zhou family even let him sit here? Today is a wedding day. Having a gambler come and eat for free is bad luck. Chun-Lu originally didn't want to argue, especially not with Sunday. This old man really wouldn't stop. He looked around for a while, but he still couldn't find him. So he walked directly towards Sunday. Why? You really want me to give a gift? Sun smiled. Of course. Everyone else gives one. Chun-Lu grinned. Accountant's son. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. I do have an account with the Zhou family, but I didn't bring money today. You lend it to me first. I'll return it later. As he spoke, Chun-Lu casually picked up a cigarette from the table. He lit it, then took a deep breath. Sun immediately frowned. You want me to lend you money? Why would I? And even if I lend it to you, when are you going to return it? Sun shook his head that he wasn't stupid. Giving money to Chun-Lu was the same as throwing it away. That he would never do that. But he forgot one thing, that he might not be stupid, but he had left something important in Chun-Li's hands. A secret that could ruin him. If you don't want to lend me the money, then forget it. Chun-Lu turned around casually. Luckily, I just saw sister-in-law Liang. He raised his hand as if he was about to greet someone. That single movement instantly terrified Accountant Sunday because his wife was among that group of women, and she was standing right beside Widow Liang. Why are you looking for that, Widow? I'll lend you the money. Just remember to pay me back. Sun hurriedly stood up and grabbed Chen Li's arm that he glared at him, then sat back down that he reached into his pocket, pulled out 1 yuan from his own money, and placed it into the gift box. Then he wrote Chen Li's name on the account book that in that era. 1 yuan was already a considerable amount of money. Chen Lu clapped his hands, picked up a handful of peanuts from the table, and started peeling them. Inside, he was laughing. You old blind son, you picked the wrong person to mess with. You just had to provoke me. The people nearby could roughly guess what had happened. A sharp-eyed man with a sly expression leaned over and nudged Accountant Sun with his elbow. Old son, looks like you've got some kind of weakness in his hands. Don't tell me you were caught climbing over some woman's wall again, watching someone bathe, or maybe sneaking around the toilet? The man grinned. Before he could finish speaking, Sun immediately grabbed the abacus from the table and swung it toward his head. Of course, he wasn't really trying to hit him, it was just teasing. Tai Juzi, stop running your mouth. Sun cursed. Then he turned his head and sat back down. Everyone in the village knew Accountant Sun had a weakness for women. On the surface, he looked honest and serious, but behind closed doors, he was always flirting with young women and wives in the village. Soon, the Zhou family's banquet officially started. Since Chen Lu had already given his gift, he naturally sat down. Anyway, he hadn't eaten enough. He planned to have a meal first, then go back into the mountains afterward. But at that moment, his eyes suddenly noticed someone. A tall man wearing a worn-out fur hat. His face was dark and dirtied. He was silently chopping firewood. Everyone else had already sat down to eat, but he only scratched his head, looked back at the banquet, smiled foolishly, and continued chopping. The pile of firewood beside him was already enormous. Not only was it enough for this wedding banquet, it was probably enough for the Zhou family to survive the entire winter. A short old man walked over. This was Zhou Xianjun, the head of the Zhou family. He kicked the pile of firewood with his foot. Seeing that most of the work was finished, he walked to the kitchen, grabbed 2 steamed buns, and stuffed them into the big man's hands. Mai Tai, stop working. Take these 2 buns and go home. Go, go. Zhou Xianjun waved his hand impatiently. Some villagers eating nearby noticed this scene, but nobody said anything because everyone knew what kind of person Zhou Xianjun was. In northeastern slang, he was called a stingy miser, someone who counted every grain of food that he barely had any hair left on his head. But his mind was extremely calculating. Mai Tai held the steamed buns. He looked at Zhou Xianjun and smiled. Although his face was covered in dirt, his teeth were surprisingly white. Uncle, can you give me a piece of pork too? Brother Zhou Bingquan said. If I chopped all this wood, you'd give me a small piece. This big man was almost 190 centimeters tall. His body was strong like an ox, but he looked completely innocent. He finished 1 steamed bun in just 2 bites. Meat? What meat? Where do I get so much meat for you? After everyone finishes eating, you can come clean up the leftovers. I'll ask your aunt to pack some for you. Now go home. Zhou Xianjun pushed him a few times. His expression was full of impatience. An older woman working beside the stove couldn't stand it anymore. Old Zhou, he's been helping you all day. He started working before sunrise. You're hosting so many tables. It's not like 1 extra meal would hurt. Zhou Xianjun immediately glared. What do you know? Why don't you invite him to your house then? 1 meal from him equals 10 ordinary people. My family can't afford that. The woman shook her head. That's not right. He didn't work at my house. But if he worked that much for me, I might not have enough meat either. But I could at least make sure he had enough steamed buns. Zhou Xianjun ignored her. He grabbed a Mai Tai and pushed him toward the door. Everyone watched quietly. Nobody really wanted to interfere because they all knew the situation. The Mai Tai worked everywhere in the village. Whoever needed help, he helped. All he wanted was a meal. He had practically grown up eating from every household in the village. But supporting someone like him was not easy. An ordinary family simply couldn't keep him full. Still, what Zhou Xianjun did today was a little too much. There was plenty of food. Even if meat wasn't unlimited, there was no reason to send him away with only 2 buns after all that work. Mai Tai stood outside the gate. He still had a smile on his face, but he looked embarrassed, awkward. Every time Zhou Xianjun pushed him, He took one step back. He occasionally scratched his head. Finally, Zhou Xianjun lost patience. He grabbed a shovel nearby and lightly hit him. Get out of here. Are you still not leaving? Where do you think I'll find meat for you? Demai Tai just smiled again. He stood at the entrance. He didn't dare go inside. But he also didn't want to leave. So he crouched down and held on a half-steamed bun that a little yellow dog walked over and rubbed against him. Demai Tai carefully broke off a tiny piece of bun and fed it to the dog. His movements were extremely gentle, almost as if he was afraid of hurting it, standing in the cold wind. His figure looked especially lonely. In that era, many families still struggled to eat enough. People might feel sympathy, but sympathy didn't always mean they had the ability to help. So everyone slowly became used to it. Them. Demai Tai was almost like a stray dog in the village. As long as he didn't starve to death, that was enough. Chen Lu saw everything that he watched silently from his seat. Then a half-chicken dish was brought to the table. Without hesitation, he stood up. Chen family's third son. You're taking food away? You haven't even eaten yet. Several women at the table immediately complained. They stared at him with wide eyes. But Chen Lu ignored them. He carried the chicken straight toward the entrance. Brother, why are you here? Demai Tai was sitting outside, rubbing his nose. When he saw Chen Lu, his face immediately lit up. That smile was pure, without a trace of greed, without a trace of suspicion. It was so simple that it hurt. Looking at him, Chen Lu remembered his previous life. When he had gone hunting bears and gotten injured, it was this foolish brother who had dragged him out of the mountain valley. He had carried him for more than 10 miles and brought him home. Thinking about that memory, Chen Li's eyes suddenly became wet. The brother who saved his life in his previous life. How could he not repay him in this life? Could he really ignore that kindness? No, he couldn't. Brother, come. Eat this. Chen Lu handed over the chicken. His voice trembled slightly. His throat felt tight. Demai Tai looked at the chicken, but he didn't immediately eat. Instead, he carefully touched the oil on the surface with his finger. Then he put that finger into his mouth and slowly tasted it. After that, he shook his head. A whole chicken was right in front of him, but he didn't dare take it, because he had already grown used to nobody caring about him. Suddenly receiving kindness, he didn't know how to react. He only looked at Chen Lu, smiling. Foolishly if he wanted to remember this person forever. Go sit at my table and eat. I already gave the gift. Chen Lu tried to pull him toward the banquet, but Demai Tai shook his head repeatedly, like a child refusing something. He was so strong that Chen Lu couldn't move him. Brother, I won't go. You go eat. After saying that, Demai Tai broke free. Then he ran back toward the little yellow dog at the gate. His huge body stood in the cold winter sunlight. His honest expression, his helplessness, his fear of entering someone else's home it touched everyone who saw it. But nobody stepped forward, because everyone knew how stingy Zhou Xianjun was. Even today's wedding banquet was considered simple by village standards. A table might look full, but the meat dishes disappeared after only a few bites. Chen Lu took a deep breath. Then he grabbed Demai Tai's arm and walked toward his own home. This time, Demai Tai didn't resist, because just now, he wasn't refusing Chen Lu, he was refusing to step inside Zhou's house. I first brought Demai Tai back home. When we arrived, I found that Yakin wasn't there. The front door was only tied shut with a rope, which meant she had probably gone out. I didn't think too much about it. I took the chicken I had packed from the wedding banquet and put it into the pot, then added the leftover rabbit meat from breakfast to heat everything up together. The firewood in the stove burned brighter and brighter. Soon, the entire kitchen was filled with warmth and steam. Demai Tai stood quietly beside me. His hands were tucked into his sleeves, and he looked extremely uncomfortable. He had never entered someone else's house before. Nobody had ever invited him in. Usually, after he helped someone finish their work, the family would simply hand him a bowl of food and let him eat. Outside in the yard, as long as he could fill his stomach and avoid hunger. That was already the happiest thing in the world for him. For Demai Tai, the first thing he thought about every morning was how to find his next meal. The food stored at home was reserved for his old mother, who was bedridden and unable to move. But Demai Tai ate a lot. The little grain his family had was never enough so he went from house to house in the village, helping with farm work and heavy labor, exchanging his strength for a meal. What are you standing there staring at? Come inside first. I grabbed his arm and pulled him into the house. Then I turned around and went back to the kitchen to add more firewood. A few minutes later, I lifted the pot lid. A wave of hot steam rushed toward me. I carried both plates of meat into the room and placed them on the table. The moment Damaitai saw the food, his eyes widened. He swallowed repeatedly. I in the entire village. There wasn't a single family that could afford to eat meat every day. Even the wealthiest household, the village secretary's family, considered it good living if they could eat meat once every few days. For ordinary people, having a proper meat meal was already difficult. For someone like Damaitai, who depended on others for food, it was even rarer. Most years, he only got a few meat tickets during the spring festival. A few ounces of pork was already considered a feast. His mouth had been starved of flavor for so long. His stomach had almost no oil in it. When he saw a whole braised chicken and a plate of rabbit meat. It was like he was looking at paradise. Don't just stand there. Go wash your hands and eat while it's hot. I spoke casually, but Damaitai shook his head. His thoughts were simple. If he hadn't worked for someone, he couldn't eat their food, especially meat. Seeing him standing there without moving, I already understood what he was thinking. I'm not giving this to you for free. There's work later. Work with me from now on. Every meal will have meat. Eat as much as you want. When he heard that, his eyes immediately lit up. There was work to do. This meal wasn't free. He nodded heavily like a little chick pecking at rice. Then he hurried outside, scooped up some cold water, and washed his hands. He was even afraid of dirtying my basin. You could call him foolish, but his thoughtfulness was heartbreaking. I shook my head. Looking at this brother of mine, I couldn't help sighing. Soon, Damaitai returned. Under my instructions, he finally sat down beside the Kong and picked up the chopsticks. Then he started eating. A piece of meat disappeared into his mouth almost instantly. The way he ate reminded me of someone swallowing a treasure without chewing. He looked incredibly satisfied. I didn't keep watching him. I was afraid he would feel embarrassed again. So I went outside and took the ox horn bow hanging on the wall. When I returned, the 2 plates of meat were already completely emptied. Damaitai was happily cleaning up the table. The free-range chicken raised in those days wasn't very large. At most, it weighed only a few kilograms, but the meat was firm and flavorful. Now only a pile of bones remained. Brother, you eat. Damaitai suddenly took out 2 chicken legs. Only then did I realize that he had secretly removed them earlier and placed them aside. I told you to eat everything. I already ate. Come on, finish them. Then we'll work. I smiled. This foolish brother of mine was still exactly the same as he was in my previous life. Simple, kind, honest. But this time, Damaitai refused to eat. Instead, he lowered his head and rubbed his nose. Then he whispered, I'll take them home. For my mother. His voice was so quiet, almost as if he was afraid I would hear. Are you full? If you are, then let's get ready to work. Try this. Can you pull it? I handed him the ox horn bow. I had already noticed that he wrapped the 2 chicken legs in oil paper and carefully put them inside his clothes. Damaitai stared at the bow. He hesitated, then scratched his head. Brother, isn't this Uncle Wong's bow? How did you get it? Before I could answer, he casually grabbed the bowstring with one hand and held the bow handle with the other. Then he gently pulled. The next second, I froze. My eyes widened. This was an ox horn bow, a traditional composite bow known for its incredible strength and killing power. I knew exactly how difficult it was to fully draw one. A high-quality ox horn bow required tremendous force for ordinary hunters. Pulling it to a full draw was almost impossible. Even with my own strength, I could barely pull it halfway, and I couldn't hold that position for long. But Damaitai, he pulled it halfway with almost no effort. His movement looked completely natural. As if he wasn't even using his full strength. My foolish brother, try again. See if you can pull it further. I gestured with my hand. Damaitai nodded. Then he continued pulling. His arm muscles tightened. His expression became serious. More and more strength flowed into his arms. Finally, the ox horn bow reached a full draw. A deep sound came from the bow. Hum. It was like an ancient beast awakening. The bow seemed to be carrying a force that had been sleeping for countless years. That moment, I could feel the terrifying power hidden inside it. Damaitai wasn't simply pulling a bowstring, he was controlling a wild beast. I stood there completely stunned. My guess had been right. This brother of mine was born with incredible strength. He was the perfect partner for mountain hunting. I took a deep breath. Excitement filled my eyes. Brother, you really are a natural hunter. From now on, with the two of us working together, eating meat every day won't be a problem anymore. I didn't tell him to stop that I wanted to know his limit. I started timing him. 0.5 minutes passed. Then 10. My Tai's face slowly turned red. The veins on his forehead became visible. Clearly, he was reaching his limit. But I didn't say anything, and he still didn't stop. He kept holding the bow at full draw. My Tai's 2 fingers were already deeply pressed into the bowstring. All right, let go. As soon as I spoke, My Tai released the tightly stretched string. Hum. A deep, powerful sound instantly exploded inside the room. It sounded almost like the low roar of an ox. The force stored inside the oxhorn bow was released in that moment, causing the air itself to tremble slightly. The echo bounced repeatedly between the walls. Even the water inside the metal cup reacted. Tiny ripples appeared on the surface, spreading outward in circles while reflecting the dim room light. I stood there, completely amazed. I knew exactly what this sound represented. It was the result of My Tai using all his strength and pushing beyond his limits. That moment, every corner of the room seemed to be filled with the lingering power of that BOW. It was as if time itself had paused for a second. Put this bow on your back. Come with me into the mountains. Everything was ready. Since Yakin still hadn't returned, I decided to take My Tai up the mountain and bring back that injured wild boar. My Tai obediently carried the bow on his back. Then he asked, Brother, what work are we doing? Are we going up the mountain to haul wood? I looked at him and smiled. We're hunting a wild boar. After bringing My Tai to Half Mountain Ridge, I immediately headed toward the place where I had encountered the wild boar last night. That boar had been injured and had fallen into the ravine. I had no idea whether it had managed to climb out yet. If it had escaped, things would become troublesome. Inside that ravine, it was basically a trap target, but once it got out into the mountains, finding it again would be extremely difficult. Fortunately, I still had confidence because I had my prediction ability. However, this ability had limitations. It could sense information about nearby living creatures, but it could not determine their exact location. Even a small deviation could mean searching an entire mountain range until my legs gave out. Plants and herbs were different. They couldn't move. Once I detected their location, I could usually find them within a 10-meter radius. But animals were different. The moment you got close, either they attacked or they became frightened and fled. We approached the ravine. My heart became increasingly tense. I silently hoped that damn wild boar had not escaped, or better yet, that it had died from its injuries inside the ravine. Then My Tai and I could simply cut it apart and carry it home. Behind me, My Tai dragged a wooden sled. His nose was red from the cold, but he still wore that foolish smile. After eating 2 full plates of meat, his body was filled with energy. Compared with his usual life, that meal was richer than anything he had eaten even during the new year. Now that his stomach finally had some oil in it, he felt stronger than ever. He probably believed that even if he had to drag all the firewood on this mountain home, he could do it. When I climbed onto the slope from last night and looked down, my heart sank. The center of the ravine was covered in blood. The surrounding snow and dirt were completely messed up, but the wild boar was gone. Completely disappeared for a moment. I even wondered if everything from last night had been a dream. Had I really fought a wild boar? Had I really shot it? But the blood stains were real. The marks left by its hooves were real. The dents carved into the slope were real. Everything proved that it had actually happened. Damn, this is troublesome. The boar has returned to the mountains. I narrowed my eyes and looked around at the same time. I focused on the information coming from my prediction ability, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't sense that injured boar. This revealed another weakness of my ability. After the first prediction, the information became much weaker and less accurate. Still, even though it was blurry, I could confirm one thing. The injured wild boar had escaped deeper into the mountains. Chasing it blindly now would only waste time. And if we ran into a black bear, we would be the ones in danger. Should I chase it? Of course I should, but not recklessly. That I needed a better way. Brother, where's the wild boar? My Tai finally caught up. He rubbed his hands together and asked, It looks like it escaped. You wait here. I'm going to borrow a dog from Dakuba. I had already thought of a solution. I would borrow the hunting dog from Dakuba's family. That dog was special that IT had been personally trained by an old hunter in the village. Although the dog was already old and slow, the instincts and skills it had learned were still there. Okay, brother. I'll wait here. Demai nodded. Then he sat down on a nearby tree stump, but I immediately grabbed him and pulled him up. Don't sit randomly in the mountains. Understand, this is the mountain god's pillow. If you sit on it, you're disrespecting the mountain god. When Demai heard that, he immediately nodded. Then he quickly moved around the stump and stood far away that he looked like he had encountered something terrifying that I wasn't actually superstitious. Especially after experiencing rebirth, I understood many things differently that I only used the village legends to scare Demai. If I explained science to him, he probably wouldn't understand. But when it came to mountain gods and old beliefs, Demai had grown up hearing those stories that he truly respected them. And honestly, in the deep mountains of northeastern China during winter, sitting on old tree stumps really wasn't a good idea. Forget superstition. The winters were long and freezing. Tree stumps stayed in contact with snow and frozen ground for months. Their temperature was extremely low. Sitting directly on them allowed cold air to enter the body that IT could easily cause health problems. Even someone as strong as Demai could still get sick. Seeing that he had developed a healthy fear of the stump, I smiled and walked back toward the village. When I passed my house, I noticed the door was still tied the same way. Exactly like when I left, IT seemed Yakin really had gone somewhere far. Could she have gone to her parents' home to bring our daughter back? Thinking about that possibility, I couldn't help smiling. A warm home, a wife, a child. That was the greatest dream I had after being reborn. Still smiling, I arrived at the 6th house on the west side of the village, right across from Uncle Wang's home. The old dirt house in front of me looked like it could collapse at any moment. Two wooden poles were supporting one side of the wall. The entire yard was a mess. Weeds covered the ground. Even heavy snow couldn't completely hide them. That meant the place had been abandoned for a long time. In the village, an abandoned yard usually meant the family wasn't able to maintain their home, just like my own house in the past. Although I had gambled away everything, although I was buried in debt, although my family could barely eat, the house itself was still repaired every year, and my father-in-law would bring my brothers-in-law over before spring to fix it. Not because they cared about me. If the house collapsed and buried me alive, they probably would have considered it justice. But their daughter, Song Yakin, still lived there. They couldn't let her suffer because of me. That was why they kept helping repair it for our yard. Yakin kept it spotless. She could even grow vegetables better than anyone else in the village. Every summer, the vegetables from our garden were always the freshest and largest. But back then, I was never satisfied. I owed too much money that I was always hiding from debt collectors. And whenever I disappeared, neighbors would come and take vegetables from our yard. By the time I returned, not even a small cucumber remained. The abandoned house in front of me belonged to a famous village barefoot doctor, Li Baoku. His son, Li Fugue, was my childhood friend. The same age as me and Demai, we had grown up together wearing nothing but shorts. Li Fugue lost his mother when he was young. His father, Li Baoku, became busy running around treating villagers. Nobody properly watched over him. As a child, Li Fugue copied a stutterer from the neighboring village. Over time, it became a habit. 10 years had passed. The problem had become deeply rooted that IT seemed like he might never be able to change it in this lifetime.